Check one. Check one, two. Yeah, it is. No, no, no.
This one, not this one. Later, presentation.
So, baby room is open, sir? Baby room is open?
It is open for the guy who is operating, he is sick.
Okay. I need to have the charger and the tripod.
You can. You can find it here.
Okay, let's start now with the third session. Okay, and our speaker now will be Father Arudas. The Jesuit priest from Tamil Nadu and teaching at St. Joseph's College, Trichy, vice principal and head of the department of history. Yes, completed his PhD in Jesuit missionaries in Madurai Mission, and at present he is the director of Madurai Province Archives at Qurbana. And his topic is Jesuit Madurai Mission and the Buonese Ism, with special reference to Ma Basudeva's by Dr. Arudas. Let's welcome him.
I didn't know that this was going to be here. I had to make my laptop here. This stuff is.
So good afternoon everybody. I know for myself that this is not the right time to present a paper. People are tired.
Hello.
Yes. So okay, very good. Anyway, I'm happy to be here. Thanks to all the organizers. It's true. I'm there. I'm in charge of our archives. I'm a Jesuit priest. So right from the beginning itself, right at the beginning, I just want to make myself clear to you that this is from Jesuit perspective.
Not Dominica. Not Dominica.
Pardon?
Not Dominica.
Why I say this? Because when I just went through the materials, it's true. Because the fight was directly between the priest from Goa and the Jesuits of Madurai province. So, a fighter writing about the other person, now you can imagine. Maybe when I just went through, there are uncharitable words, expressions. It's true. So, anybody who reads the writings of Jesuits about Alvarez and Suarez will get very negative opinion about Alvarez and Suarez. Only here, I tell you very sincerely and honestly, only after coming here, I heard that there's a move to make Alvarez blessed and saint and all those things. For me, till now, till the time I reached here, I had a very, very the other side of understanding about Alvarez. Different?
Yeah, Bishop Alvarez is different from this.
What's this one?
Alvarez is a...
Okay. Oh, I thought this one. Sorry. Not the... No, this is a different church, no?
Yes, yes. There is so many.
Oh, okay. Anyway, let me get clarified. Anyway, about this, Jesuit Maria Mission and the Governor's Prison, this was special reference to Mar Basilius. Now, in Maria Mission, there are two phases in the Maria Mission. That is, old Maria Mission and the new Maria Mission. Yes. So old Maria Mission and new Maria Mission. Old Maria Mission, we say, we know, in 1542, St. Francis Xavier came to India. When he came to India, he was on the coastline only. He was on the coast. For a few years, he couldn't come inside the land, inside. So it was only in 1606, Robert de Nobili, he came inside, he came to Madurai, settled, and he started this mission. So though St. Francis Xavier Jesuit came in 1542 itself, it was only in 1606, Robert de Nobili, he established Madurai mission. From 1606 to the time 1773, the Society of Jesus was suppressed. It is called Old Maria Mission. And then the new Maria Mission is, the Society of Jesus was revived, restored in 1814. Though it was restored in 1814, by the time the Jesuits came to Madurai Mission again, it was 1838. So from 1838, that's the 1838 is the starting point of new Madurai Mission. So in between what happened 1773 to 1838. So in between these two time, priests from Goa, they were taking care of the Catholics in the mission during the absence of the Jesuits. When the Jesuits came back to their mission, that is in 1838, they had to face challenges from the Goan priests as they refused to leave the mission to the Jesuits. They came from, this are Patrado, Goan priests, and these Jesuits came from Propaganda Fide. So they came with the official letter from the Pope asking the Goan priests to leave the place, but they refused to leave. Hence, there was unpleasant things. So such Goan priests were later excommunicated. This led to Goan schism and the formation of a different Catholic Church that we will see. Padrado, I don't need to explain this to you because this group is well versed with the Padrado system. So it's a right given to the King of Portugal and all those things we know. So I skip. So now, in 1838, when people from Madura mission, after the restoration of the Society of Jesus, they made appeal to the Archbishop of Pondicherry. So in turn, the Bishop of Pondicherry, he made an appeal to the Pope and all those things. And then at the request of Pope Gregory XVI, Rosan was the first Jesuit general of the restored society. So the Superior General of the Society of Jesus, he entrusted the Madura mission to the Provincial of Lyons in France. Then he sent 4 Jesuits: Joseph Bernard, Louis Grandier, Louis Durante, Alexander Martin. So these were the 4 Jesuits. I just want to tell you one thing. The old Mary, there's a difference between old Mary mission and new Mary mission. In old Mary mission, many nationalities of Europeans came to Mary mission. People from France, from Italy, or English people, all sorts of Europeans came. Whereas in new Mary mission, it was only the French Jesuits, nobody else. So only the French Jesuits came to new Mary mission. So these 4 were, among these 4, the first one, Joseph Bertrand, he was a really giant, and then he was a pushing person, like as a very enthusiastic, zealous Jesuit. All the 4, yes, but among Bertrand, because he was the key man, his life was threatened 3 times. He was poisoned, but somehow he escaped. There are many stories. All this because of the government priest, because he was in one time. That's true. I just want to tell you only one incident, that this place, those of you who know Tamil Nadu a little bit, near Karaikudi, Devakotai, Oriyu and all those things, there's a place, Orikotai. There's a small village, even now it's a small village only, Orikotai. Father Joseph Bertrand seemed to have come to Orikotai. And there, the morning for Mass, there was a young boy serving for Mass. And he attended the Mass. This father didn't know who that boy was, young boy. So after the Mass, this father seemed to have fainted. Then they just suspected a little bit. Then they caught up this boy. Then they inquired. Then they said, Muthupatnam is near Ramnad. Ramnad, you know, Rameswaram, Ramnad, all those things, you know. Ramnad, there's a government priest. So he was, that young boy was sent by the government priest to finish the life of Joseph Bertrand. So that was the thing. He confessed, that boy confessed when he was threatened and all those things, confessed. So anyway, well, all this happened. This is the thing. So I feel a bit of uneasiness to present all these things to you also, because that's why I cautioned you that this is purely a Jesuit perspective. Okay. Government schism and the formation of Independent Catholic Church. How this Independent Catholic Church was formed. So Patrolo being cancelled in 1886, that we know. His Majesty King of Portugal signed a concord issue by His Holiness Pope Leo XIII. So whereby this was cancelled, and the King of Portugal, he himself accepted and he signed. Okay, that's it. So from that time on, it was cancelled. Now, a few native Christians of Goa, on learning that the crown of Portugal had given back to the Pope all the rights and privileges till then enjoyed in the Portuguese places, felt the most insane fury. So at once they set on foot the Patrolo Defense Association. So the Patrolo Defense Association was put. Then the chief agitator and ringleader of this movement was an interdicted priest called Alvarez. No, this is not Alvarez. In a meeting held at Goa on the 21st October 1886, Alvarez made a most violent and anti-Christian speech, denying both to the Pope and to the King of Portugal the right of issuing such a concord. That is 1886. After the due execution and issue of this concord by Monsignor, then the delegate of Apostolic in 2nd of January 1987, Alvarez and his most vigorous followers retired to Colombo, fearing some stringent measures will be taken against them. So, the Archbishop of Goa, after repeated but fruitless endeavors to recall Alvarez to a more diplomatic course, laid under a temporary interdict his ephemeral periodicals, which mostly tended to create mischief in the state, and to cause rebellion against the power of the Archbishop of Goa. In response to this interdict, Alvarez was so foolhardy as to sue his own Archbishop in civil courts, but at Lisbon, the cause of the Archbishop was upheld and Alvarez was condemned. This final blow from the Lisbon court, far from discouraging Alvarez, only kindled his fury and all the more. The Patrol Defense Association was converted into independent Catholic Church. Alvarez constituted himself as the head of his new sect, and from that time assumed the grand and pamphlet denomination of Don Antonio Francisco Xavier Alvarez Julius I, Archbishop of Ceylon, India and Goa. Now Alvarez gets excommunicated. Alvarez continued his campaign against the Pope and the King and his representatives in Ceylon. His Grace Bonjean, the then Archbishop of Colombo, in a pastoral letter dated 3rd September 1889, excommunicated Alvarez, his followers, accomplices and abettors, both clerical and lay. Now comes Mark Basilius. So this Suarez. Suarez seems to be the most assiduous of Alvarez's followers, and he is also the last champion of that curious sect. Suarez began to attract public notice as a zealous follower of Alvarez at the very commencement of the rebellion, that is Patrol Defense Association. Then Suarez was a subdeacon in the seminary of Goa, but he left the seminary. Whether of his own accord or he was asked to go, that we don't know. The letter of Mark Gregorius, it is stated that Suarez was ordained deacon as well as priest on the same day. Therefore, Suarez resembles Alvarez in that he was ordained deacon and priest by the Jacobite Bishop of Malabar. Suarez declared himself as the Archbishop of Ceylon, India and Goa. I was just gaining some time, but then there was no time. They said, no, you just... I asked, requested her to give me I can be the second one to present by the time I could read PowerPoint. Yesterday I sat through, but then anyway, now just a few things. You can find it, this upspring of Suarez, that is, wherever he goes, he was really successful. So, the Jesuit has written, wherever he went, there are many places he went to. His first appearance in Tirunelveli district is quite characteristic of Suarez and his work. In the Sri Vaikuntam, so I don't want to give, because you may not be aware of all these places. When I say Sri Vaikuntam, Kulasegara, all those things, you may not understand. You may understand only Tuticorin, Tirunelveli, that even I don't know whether you learn. Tuticorin, Tirunelveli, Therima. Okay, Periyadalai, it's all the places where he right from Tuticorin up to Tuticorin, Tirunelveli, Madura, Dindigul, Trichy, all those, these are the places wherever he moved. I have sent it in my articles. I have given the article to her. Wherever she went, for example, there are, as I said yesterday during the question hour, there was a sect. The sect in the sense, there are some people rebelled against the parish priest. So as soon as Suarez came to know that, he just wanted to make use of that chance. That is fishing in the troubled waters, right? So he went there. He offered himself his service to them, and he made a sect. So wherever it was there, everywhere. So the Jesuit Malay province, the Jesuits, they issued many cases against Suarez, but fortunately or unfortunately, he came out very successfully. Suarez. There are reasons for that, political reasons too, because the British missionaries, the British government, it's not that they were neutral, no, because they were not Catholics. There's somehow, plus the English and French also, those of you who are very much familiar with the world history, know that the French and the English, they don't go together. They are always enemies, like. So in that way, all these missionaries, Jesuit missionaries, are all French people. But the government was English government. So that also played a part. Because so much so, the English, the statement from the High Court, they said the Jesuits are making division. That's why they have condemned the Jesuits too. It's a sect. Actually, that is the Roman Catholic Church, and Soros is making a division. But then anyway, that's all in a very all these I have. Wherever Soros went, these are the things. Soros is an episcopally ordained priest of the Syrian Church. Soros has commission extending from Trichinopoli to Cape Comorin. Soros is empowered to solemnize marriages, and in doing so, dispense bans and everything. So, Jesuit has written that Soros is a man of, he brings it as a contradiction, man of contradiction. The independent Catholicism has not been heard of in any part of the world previous to 1889. He is to all outward appearance a Roman Catholic priest, not only in his dress but also in the rituals that he uses. And yet, he denounces the head of the Roman Catholic Church and the Roman Catholic clergy. He is ordained priest by the Jacobite Syrian bishop, but professes no part of that religion. He receives a commission extending from Trichinopoli to Kanyakumari from an archbishop who is but a fictitious archbishop and does nothing for himself in India. He receives from the said archbishop a dispensation which is, so it goes like that. Under these circumstances, some enquiry must be made about Soros. This is what they have done. The following questions would readily suggest themselves in the course of the enquiry. When a subdeacon of the Roman Catholic Church is ordained deacon and a priest by a Jacobite bishop, how far is that ordination valid? Chiefly when, as in the present case, the said subdeacon has been laid under an excommunication by his legitimate archbishop. So to what religion would a person so ordained continue to belong? What relation is there, if any, between the Jacobite Syrian Church and the independent Catholic Church? How did they become amalgamated, if at all? Is there already a real or fictitious Archbishop of Ceylon, India and Goa? In virtue of what right does Alvarez grant to his disciple Soros a commission extending from Trichinopoli to Kanyakumari? Who is the Patriarch of Antioch who has granted to Soros the concession to use the Latin ritual? Is that concession valid when it is not granted or sanctioned by the Roman Catholic Patriarch? The district magistrate, in spite of all the strongest protestations to the contrary from the superior of Roman mission, Jesuit mission, somehow Soros came out successfully in everything that I told you already. So the Jesuits really suffered a lot. It was all published in Madras Mail, this day, Madras Mail of 15th May, this day. Now I just go to the conclusion. There are many places it happened. I just this is Kotubuli, the final strategy was successful, yet at the end I just want to, there were people writing against Soros also. There's a letter. So on and off Soros was in India, Ceylon, the thing, and even after coming to Ceylon, he continued writing letters to the people. But after a few years, time came, people were against Soros. So on 22nd May, the people of Arnakulam near Tirunelveli, they sent a letter to Soros, who was stationed at Ceylon. Your letter of Ceylon, 8th May, duly reached us on the 15th. We regret that we sinned against God by following into your snares before we were able to know you fully well, in spite of the previous warnings of God to guard us against the wolves which clothe themselves in sheep skins. we fell into your snares, believed you to be a true pastor, and joined your party, and thus incurred the anger and displeasure of God. From the moment that you appeared among us, we experienced nothing else than troubles, loss of money, and life and soul. In consequence of having attached himself to your party, one Pudumai Muthu Pillai, he died without the last sacraments. The same fate fell to the lot of his father also. So this is how it goes. They said, so what confidence then can we have in such a priest as you? We have returned to the true church, that is the Roman Catholic Church. As a church which was lost in conflagration of the, okay, that's the thing. This is how they write. So at last, this is a wonder for me, though the government, British government was very supportive of Zoras and all those things, and wherever he went, he had some people. Yet, the last, as it is recorded in the Jesuit Marie Province archives, the last days and the last moment of Soros was very, very pathetic. Soros dies an orphan at Int'l. That is, I have given this title. Soros then was not successful in his mission, although he went to Kalikulam, Panangudi, Vadakkankulam, Vembar. There are many places like that. There was a young boy named Kembis. I was talking with Sujit about Kembis. He was ordained, yes. Ordained by Soros or something. Okay, you are in Palitamo. By the end of his active ministry, Soros took possession of two small churches in Muthalagupatti. That is the last place of Muthalagupatti, Dindigul. The parish priest of Dindigul made a lawsuit. The hearing went on nearly for a month. Mar Basilius, that is Soros, he understood that this was his last chance and tried by any means to defend himself. Soros lost his case and was ordered to pay the cost. He had no money. 4 policemen caught hold of him and forcibly brought him before the court. There he could only escape jail by declaring himself destitute and signed a certificate to this effect. He lost all prestige and power, abandoned and despised by his followers. He remained still a short time in Muthalagupatti, starving. One day, having probably nothing to eat, he ate some roasted groundnuts. He could not digest them. Cholera attacked him, and in a few hours he was at death's door. He was asked whether he wished a priest. He could not speak, but waved his hand signifying he wanted no one. A pencil and a paper were put in his hand for him to write down what he desired. He declined everything. Putting on a revolting expression, he expired. Abandoned by all. The man with the lakhs of rupees left as his whole future 5 annas, that is a paisa, 5 annas and 6 pies, a paper with and a tins. Okay, bamboo. The collector then, of his death, the collector ordered the parish priest of Dindigul to bury him. The parish priest of Dindigul replied with a polite but categorical refusal. The collector wanted to bury him in the cemetery, but some Catholics opposed, saying it is against the law to bury an excommunicated person in a Catholic cemetery. The collector was vexed. Seeing a tree at a distance, he said, "Dig at the foot of this tree and bury." The order was carried out at once. This happened at the beginning of 1902. Some say 1902, or some people say 1903. Anyway, that's all. But in our record, it is there as 1902. The new Malay mission faced many problems. This is how, when we go through this whole history, no other problem. Yes, I am finishing. This is the conclusion. The new Malay mission faced many problems. When we go through its whole history, no other problem gave us so much trouble as the Patraudo problem. It was a pity that no meaningful dialogue took place. This is my conviction. There's a pity that no meaningful dialogue took place between the Patraudo and Patraudo missionaries to understand each other sincerely and arrive at a reasonable and practical adjustment. After all, both Prabhakanda and Patrava, both. After all, both were doing God's work. On account of the prolonged quarrels, which lasted almost a century, the church in Tamil Nadu has suffered very much. Perhaps the bulk of South India would have been Christians, but for this problem. Even today, it is there. Its effects are felt in those places, especially where this problem was acute in former times. Thank you very much.
Now it's a question time. Oh, yes.
Father Suarez started the mission and continued in Madurai region. So how long did it survive, and is the group still now, or it is extinguished?
How long he survived? That he died in 1902 or 3. That's the time. That is, active ministry came only after 1887. So that's the time, just for 6 years. Then whether his faction, the people remain, there are people, I find them Tamil Nadu, but I have never checked whether they are the descendants of Suarez. There are churches, not the Orthodox Church is there, but I don't know whether the Orthodox Church has got anything to do with Suarez. Yes.
See, I'd like to ask one question and make one correction. See, the correction is Mother Alvarez was validly consecrated by 3 bishops, Malangadu Orthodox Church in 1889 at Kottayam, where we have an eyewitness account of that in manuscript. But, and also it is confirmed that before that, a few weeks before that, 4 subdeacons of Roman Catholic Church were ordained first as the full deacons, and on the next day, not on the same day, that was not permitted in the Orthodox Church, the very next day,
Ordination.
Their ordination took place as priests. One is over as, out of that 4, I mentioned in my paper yesterday. So, but we have no record or never heard about the name Basilius or his bishopric. Till his death, Mother Alvarez was a bishop in the Orthodox Church, no doubt. But we don't have any record about Father Suarez, say after a time of 1890, somewhere 1899 or somewhere that time maximum too. Afterwards, we don't have any. Secondly, even if he was ordained from the Orthodox side, it is not possible to get the episcopal name Basilius, because the names Basilius and Ignatius were reserved for the Catholicos and the Patriarch of Antioch respectively, even if that seats are empty. Never it will be given to anybody else. So, if he became a bishop, or pretending as being a bishop, I just want to know from where, do you have any records that from where
He was
consecrated as a bishop? Bishop, not as priest and deacon, because we have records.
Yes. We also have records and letters for him. We ordained as a deacon and a priest. Some records goes on the same day. Some other records is a 1 day later.
1 day. That is what I think it is 14th and 15th of the same month.
30th April and 1st May of
Maybe,
1889.
I'm talking in Malayalam era.
Anyway, there are 2 versions, but these 2 are recorded in the.
This is a confirmed version because it is written by an eyewitness. Even if his name was not mentioned, I know who the person is who wrote those records. That's a contemporary written eyewitness account.
Okay.
So we can believe it.
Yes, he was bishop of the Chaldean Church. But
See, please, I am asking you.
yes,
See, we have no record, and I presume that Even Mar Alvarez didn't know that he became a bishop.
But Soros had ordained priest also, no? He has ordained Kempis in Pallithamam, is Tamil Nadu.
He ordains.
He ordained.
But if in whichever church he belongs to, he must be a bishop to ordain any
Yes.
order. The Orthodox Church never made him a bishop. And we have not even a secondary record that there was a person. Absolutely no communication afterwards.
But at the same time, it is true that he went around as a bishop only.
Pretending maybe. Pretending. That's all I can say.
Okay.
Otherwise he has to get it from somewhere else. Not from Orthodox Church.
Okay.
And I heard a rumor that one Abdisho, as father said, I'm sorry to
But now we believe that he was ordained bishop, no, the priest by Malabar.
Yeah, Mar Gregorius.
Yes.
But
bishop, ordained bishop, I don't know.
by one Mar Abdisho,
Yes.
he was a Catholic. He was a Catholic, Roman Catholic. He was a Roman Catholic of Sri Malabar Church. He went to Mesopotamia to get ordained by the Chaldean Catholic patriarch, but he didn't get. He went to the Chaldean Nestorian patriarch, became a bishop, and came back to India. He was declared as a Jesuit by the Catholic Church. He ended up at Thrissur. I heard a rumor that he made it, but even that one was not mentioned anywhere in their history, so far as I have seen. That's why do you have any record that he was ordained by whom, or at least where? Or just he was pretending as a bishop. Now also there are many pretending bishops in Kerala. That's why I'm asking.
See, he died in 1902 or 3, okay. But then Alvarez seemed to have died 1923. So in that case, Alvarez should have written something about Soros, no?
Nothing.
No, that's my question, because
Nothing.
No.
So far as I had seen, even our publications then was periodically reporting the reports of the Soros having some churches, congregations in Tiruchirappalli, Thoothukudi and etc.
Yes.
But we have no communication that how he got it, what you said is right. And later he came to Kerala in inquiry of getting some priests for that area. We sent 2 priests over there. One returned, the other one, I don't know what happened. It is confirmed that one person came back to Kerala. And what reason we don't know. But afterwards, there are mentions about Mar Alvarez, even unfrequently in our periodicals of that time. But nothing about, even the Ceylon mission was mentioned somewhere, but nothing about Soros after a period. Even there is no, not even, if he is consecrated by Mar Abdisha, definitely he will excommunicate by us also. That also was not mentioned anywhere. That means on a particular day or a particular period, all communications cut off, even with Mar Alvarez.
So this subject stands for further research and
Yes,
study.
of course.
Yes. For me, Soros, only the last part of Soros I knew from our archives earlier. Only because of, thanks to Ray, I just went through our archives and so many things, and luckily I got one note written by a Jesuit, obviously, but who that Jesuit wrote that, and I do not know. And that even in a notebook he has written, but then that ends abruptly. He essentially writes, but then that ends abruptly because that Jesuit might, I do not know. As he was writing, maybe he felt sick or died, I don't know, but he did not complete that. Yeah, that was
Just want to
Yes.
reply to Dr. Kurian's question, concerns. I think just first want to thank Professor Arun Das for your engagement in this research, which is definitely not explored by recent researchers so far. So it is I guess if Mar Basilius is valid or not, this didn't concern Jesuits much because he was already schismatic. So for the Jesuits, he was so-called Basilius. And I don't think in Shambhaganur there would be some original documents concerning his consecration.
There is the archives, Shambhaganur means our archives, Jesuit archives.
Yeah, a Jesuit archive in Shambhaganur. For instance, in the archive of the Congregation of Oriental Churches in Rome, which was actually part of the Congregation of Buona Fide, I found a document on not consecration but ordination of an Goan priest belonging to this independent Catholic Church. And this original letter issued in Syriac with English translation is kept in Rome. Why? Because this priest, this referred priest called Bodelu, Goan priest, was probably arrested or stopped in Goa, and this original document was with him and confiscated by the Archbishop of Goa. And because of this, this letter was eventually through Ceylon reached. This letter reached Rome. So in this channel, we might have some original letter of consecration or ordination. But in the Jesuit archive, I think the Jesuit, I don't think they worried about his validity so much. So I don't think in the Jesuit archive, we might have traces of original documents.
But there is a chance for another to have some documents somewhere.
Yeah, indeed, but maybe not.
My only concern is when the Patrol Defense Association was formed, then later, Soros was very much associating himself with Alvarez. Mm-hmm. Is it not true?
Yes. In the beginning.
Even when Independent Church was formed, Independent Catholic Church was formed, Soros was there with Alvarez. So much a person who was with Alvarez, if Alvarez has not mentioned anything about Soros, I don't know, he should have written about Soros, no?
From the records that we have Soros actively working in Sri Lanka up till 1894 and sometimes also in 1895. We have found his signatures in many of the sacraments that he has done, like baptisms that he has done in Mannar area and even in BuonaMonte Church. So till then it is there. But after that, there is no records of him or communication. But we only hear from other sources where it is not yet confirmed or we have not seen any evidence to prove that it is like that. And we do not know the reason also. No?
I think he was cut off from Mar Alvarez and went independently. See, when I said that he came to Kerala in search of bishops, he was referred to as the Vicar General of Mar Alvarez in Goa. But afterwards, we hear nothing about him. And the priest who was sent with him, I'm 100% sure that he came back within 1 or 2 or 3 years, and he died in Kerala. And his tomb is here, there. There is a record for him. But even then, there is no record about Zohar. So, only guess what I have is he deserted himself from Mar Alvarez and went independently. And also about what I said, that there is another place this record may have, if Abdisho did say. The Abdisho was in litigation with the Roman Catholic Bishop of Tuchur. Then, the Tuchur bishop was, or the vicariate, was trying to get every bit of documents to prove that Abdisho was doing something wrong. So perhaps, I didn't check, there may be records at Tuchur Archdiocese.
Okay. So thank you very much for the interaction. Maybe it's an interesting topic to further investigate. Alvarez, as you say, maybe he might have cut off from Soros, because Soros seemed to have been working right from Chudigal to Chudigal, Kanyakumari and Marava, Madura, and then Chudigal and all those places. Whereas Alvarez confined himself with Ceylon and then Mangalore and all those things. Alvarez doesn't seem to be coming over to Madurai mission area.
And he has come and for a in the Kanyakumari Kutupuli.
Kutupuli, Soros was very much famous.
But he has, Alvarez has come there and even conducted a Holy Week service.
The earlier days. Okay. So thank you very much. God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next speaker is a young scholar by the name of Dr. Father. Srilanka Orthodox Church from Brahma, Mangalore. He is from mission of Bishop Alvar. Authored several books, and one is Father R. Nonya.
Respected fathers, members of the august body present here. The paper goes like, from Goa to Ceylon via Brahmawar, the role of the Brahmawar mission in the independent Catholic movement in the 19th and 20th century. Independent Catholic mission was formed by the efforts of Father Alvarez, later known as Bishop Alvarez, and presently declared as the Blessed by the Malankara Orthodox Church. He joined the Malankara Orthodox Church, where he was consecrated as Archbishop of Goa, Ceylon and India, with the title of Mar Julius I. He embraced the Malankara Orthodox Church, believing that it to be more Indian and Asian in its activities. Thus, the mission got its full identity and expanded from Goa to Ceylon and several places of India like Savantwadi, Thuthukudi, Dindigal, Tiruchirappalli, Brahmawar, etc. Brahmawar is the only living mission center of Father Alvarez, which contains more than 1,000 Konkani families at present. This is the only non-Malayali and unique congregation of Malankara Orthodox Church, and so it is elevated as Diocese of Brahmawar. Regarding Konkani, Konkani is an Indo-Aryan language which is spoken all over the west coast of Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, etc. Because of this, the coast is also known as Konkan coast. This is the vernacular language of most of the Christians of this locality. First written document of Konkani language is to be reached only in the 12th century. So many things are there about Konkani. I am just skipping that one. And Christianity in Canara region. It is believed that the Christianity was spread in Canara region by Saint Thomas and Saint Bartholomew, the disciples of Jesus. So many evidences are there that in Canara region there was apostolic Christians before canonical colonial period. I have certain points. We have a folk song in our midst that goes like this, and I quote: Nagdo Batalo, Shatak Betalo, Shatkarak, Shikon Divana, Udaditolo, which means, this is in Konkani, which means Saint Bartholomew visiting farmers in their fields and proclaiming the gospel and baptizing them. Also, we can find so many Christian names of the places near Brahmawar like Saint Mary Island near Malpet, Tonse, which derived from Thomas near Kalyampur, Petri, derived from Peter, which pronounced as Petra in Kannada language, near Brahmawar, and Barkur, derived from Bartholomew plus Uru. In the colonial period, in 1558, the Portuguese took hold of Mangalore and other important towns and harbours like Honavar, Kundapur, Gangoli in Canara region, and they established churches. At the same time, Local Christians were subjected to harassment and persecution by the Portuguese as heretics. For example, according to Father Ejo Mascarenhas, there was a community living in Goa known by the name Tomse, a colony. These people was found close to Kalyampur near Mangalore. It is near to our place. They claimed that they were the followers of St. Thomas and were subjected to harassment and persecution by the Portuguese heretics. We can see the Konkan coast in the map. Thus, due to course of time, Canara Christian went through many difficulties and persecution. When the British East India Company trying to rule India in the first part of 19th century, there were many kings in different parts of Karnataka. Some were Hindus and others Muslims. Among the Muslim rulers was Tipu Sultan between 1782 to 1799. From Srilanka, wanted to spread his rule along the coastal Karnataka. Somehow he was under the impression that Christians were supporting British. During his invasion in the year 1784, he destroyed a lot of churches out of 26 churches, except that Hospitaller Church, looted and church belongings and took thousands of Christians as captives. The soldiers took about 80,000 Christians in food to Srilanka, that is more than 350 kilometers from the Brahmavara to Srilanka. Thousands died on the way due to the atrocities. Many got converted to Islam and survived. A few thousand managed to reach Srilanka as Christians, and eventually many returned after the death of Tipu Sultan in the year 1799. When he captured whole of Canara in 1784, Christians captives camped in Brahmavara for a week en route to Srilanka. Thus, the blood and tears of our ancestors who martyred for faith cleansed it and became the center of Indian Independent Catholic Mission in Canara. Independent Catholic Mission in Brahmavara. Brahmavara is a town which is about 13 kilometers from Udupi city along the National Highway 66. The name Brahmavara implies God's blessing. Brahma, God, Vara, blessing, God's blessing. Milagres Church of Kalyampur was founded in 1678 under the jurisdiction of Pedrad missionaries. It was rebuilt in 1806 after the attacks of Tipu Sultan in 1784. During the controversial period between Pedrada and propaganda, the church sided with Pedrado and supported Archbishop of Goa. Some of the parishioners, however, detached themselves from the Pedradis and began a separate church called Mount Rosary Church in Kalyampur within a distance of 1 kilometer or just opposite to the Milagres Church. This church was established in 1837 and was adhered to propaganda jurisdiction of Verapoli. By 1886, Milagres Church of Kalyampur was also brought under propaganda jurisdiction as per the Concordat of 1886 between the Pope of Rome and the Portuguese king. Against the Concordat, majority of the people of Milagres Church Kalyampur revolted and established a separate church at Brahmavara under the leadership of Father Alvarez in the year 1889. Krantivarius considers this incident as the first anti-foreigner step of Indian clergy against both Rome and Portugal. It was the beginning of a movement towards indigenization. I am just going through how it got originated, the division of Kalyampur Milagres Church. In this controversial period, the vicar of Milagres Church Kalyampur, Father David Pereira, fortunately my own name, Father David Pereira, left the church on 15th February 1887. On the same day, Pedrado supporters shut the doors of Milagres Church Kalyampur. Father Albert D'Souza, vicar of Mount Rosary Church Kalyampur, was given the charge as vicar of Milagres Church by the Bishop of Mangalore, Bishop Pagani S.J. on 24 May 1887. He was allowed to enter the Milagres Church only after the compromise which took place on 26th December 1887 between the vicar and supporters of the Pedrado. This compromise did not last for long, and again church got closed. The supporters of Pedroado in Milagres Church, Colombo, sent 2 delegates to different places to analyze their stand on 1886 Concordat. They were Mr. Jackie Manuel Luis or Putu Luis of Madpadi and Gurkar Paul Clement Luis of Baikadi. They perambulated on the metropolitan cities like Madras, Calcutta, Goa, Bombay, etc. At Bombay they met Dr. Lisbado Pinto, who was a Portuguese parliamentary member of Goa, introduced Father Alvarez to the Pedroado supporters, Kalyampur, means Putu Luis and the other Paul Clement Luis of Baikadi. This way, the supporters of Pedroado in Kalyampur came into contact with Father Alvarez. The news of the meeting of Pedroado supporters by Father Alvarez spread in Kalyampur through the postal message of Paul Clement Luis. The same news reached to Bishop Pagani also. This move of Pedroado supporters made Bishop worried. Immediately the Bishop called a secret meeting of advisors and deputed Father Piacentini SJ, an European who was the vicar of Mangalore Milagres Church, to take possession of Milagres Church, Kalyampur. With the collector's order and with the police force, Father Piacentini entered the church at the beginning of the December 1888, which kept closed by the Pedroado supporters for almost 2 years. Means from 1887 February to 1888 December it was closed. The Pedroado supporters failed to protest them due to police force arrested few of Pedroado supporters and others flee away. Thus the possession of the church was secured by the supporters of the propaganda brigade and police force was stationed there for more than 6 months. Establishment of independent Catholic mission at Brahmawar. Goan priest Father Alvarez from Colombo, Ceylon, landed at Brahmawar on 31st December 1888. He had been excommunicated by the Bishop of Colombo on 28th November 1888. At the same time, he got the invitation letter from Brahmawar too. So he started to Colombo to Brahmawar. Thus the independent Catholic mission, which started at Goa, flourished to Ceylon, got a new center at Brahmawar in 1888-89. By knowing Father Alvarez's arrival at Kalyampur, Bishop Pagani of propaganda supporters conspired with the sailors of the ship and made Father Alvarez to come down at Mangalore instead of Malpai, which was very near to Kalyampur. Father Alvarez continued his journey on foot to residence of Advocate Sri Shivarao, one who was fighting the cases for Pedroado group of Milagres Church, Kalyampur. From there, he went to Balmata Vessel Mission Center and was received by Mr. Putu Luis of Madpadi and made arrangements to stay for Father Alvarez at Barkur Vessel Mission Center. Thus, we have Father Alvarez had a good relationship with the Vessel missions also, because they were against this propaganda people. This was followed by a pastoral. Then on 31st December 1888 itself, Bishop Pagani issued a circular to both the clergy and the laity, warning them to have nothing to do with Father Alvarez. Father Rajesh had mentioned it. Okay. This was followed by a pastoral letter on 7th February 1889, declaring the sacraments he would solemnize would be considered null. The faithful who were of religious tendencies were forbidden with the diverse pain and penalties to have intercourse of any religious nature with the schismatic priest. To give him any help, either by deed or word, was to be looked upon as schismatic attempt. Unquote. Following it, Father Alvarez issued the pastoral letter of excommunication dated 15th February 1888. Thus, Bishop Pagani denied Father Alvarez and his followers ecclesiastically and communal brotherhood. In spite of several hardships, Father Alvarez reached Nilavar, nearly 6 kilometers away from Brahmawar, at the invitation of Mr. Jerome D'Souza, and started to start his sacraments. But it was not father of Peter D'Souza. For a few weeks, Father Alvarez exercised various ecclesiastical functions there. Since Nilawar was a remote area, most people found it difficult to attend the religious rituals. Therefore, Father Alvarez planned to shift the center of his activities to Brahmawar, which is situated between Kalyampur and Baku and had road facilities in those days too. 97 cents of land was taken for rent at 50 paise per annum from a Hindu Timmanachar. At first, in the thatched roof, the Holy Eucharist and the other sacraments began to be celebrated from the month of March 1889. Father Alvarez offered the first Holy Eucharist in Brahmawar thatched roof church, dedicating it to Our Lady of Miracles, means Milagris Church. Thus, the Milagris Church, as a rival to the Milagris Church Kalyampur from which they separated, the sacraments were now celebrated with great pomp. How the mission center survived and developed. Brahmawar mission survived and developed just because of the dedicated service of Reverend Father Rod Jeffrey Narone and priests who serve the congregation selflessly. Lack of priests is the main reason for losing other mission centers of Father Alvarez and hindrance for the independent Catholic mission. Brahmawar Mission Center is blessed in this regard. The main force behind the band of priests who serve the community is Blessed Father Azur Narana, one who taught Latin Missal to his successors like Father P.G. Koshi, Father K.K. Kuriakos and Father K.T. Varghese, so on. Father Azur Narana is another victim of Dom Valente, the Archbishop of Goa. When Father Alvarez got the news from his native, immediately sent 3 emissaries to Goa in the leadership of Mr. David Passan of Uppur. Father Narana accepted the call of Father Alvarez and joined him at Brahmawar to carry out the independent Catholic mission under Malankara Orthodox Church. On 21st April 1889, Father Narana celebrated the Easter Sunday service as the maiden one at Brahmawar and thus joined the Malankara Orthodox Church. As promised earlier, Father Alvarez handed over his vicarship to Father Narana and moved to Kerala, and got ordained as a bishop on 29th July 1889. Father Alvarez brought some seminarians of Rackle Seminary, Goa, who were supporting Pedroado to OTS, Orthodox Theological Seminary, Kottayam, and ordained them as priests by Perumala St. Gregorius Bishop. They are Luis Mario Suarez of Goa, Damian Lopez, Luis Mario Suarez for Ceylon, Colombo, Ceylon, Damian Lopez for Kalyampur, then Joseph Xavier Butelo for Colombo, Antonio to Colombo, Jeremio D'Souza to Ceylon only, Alvarez Antonio Suarez, he ordained for Ceylon, and Rene Vilaiti as Ramban later, and Alexander for Kalyampur in 1889, then Givargis for Kalyampur in 1889, and Alexander Kanyamtara in 1902 and 1911. So these all things. Already Dr. Kurian told about these all things. Rene Vilaiti was ordained as bishop on 29th May 1892 at Our Lady of Good Death, Colombo, under the title Martimotheos for American Diocese. According to the above list, at least 4 were ordained for Kalyampur Brahmawar mission, but only Father Damian Lopez served the community as assistant to Father Narana for 20 years and expired for unknown reason in 1910 and was interred inside the church at Brahmawar, St. Mary's Cathedral. He was known among the people as Damian Padri. Still we can see the tomb of Father Damian Lopez over there. Then Father Narana, the pioneer of Brahmawar mission. Bishop Alvarez established many centers of independent Catholic mission, mainly at Goa, Ceylon, Savantwadi, Thoothukudi, Dindigal, Tiruchirappalli and in Brahmawar. Except Brahmawar, all centers vanished or there is no more members or church. But in Brahmawar, we have lively community even though the members are diminishing. Okay. I am just concluding this paper. How Brahmawar helped Independent Catholic Mission? Independent Catholic Mission is a global movement. Father Alvarez had a great vision, and we can see his efforts to expand the mission in US, Great Britain, etc. too. At times, he stayed in Brahmawar. In 1896, Bishop Alvarez declared as a traitor by the Portuguese government. He escaped from Goa and took refuge in Brahmawar. He almost travelled on foot more than 75 miles in a night. Challenges. In a letter, Bishop Alvarez wrote to Father P.G. Koshi dated 24th February 1916 states he wanted to start a seminary in Brahmawar, but Father Narana showed no interest in it as he knew the situation and ground reality of Brahmawar. They were economically poor and illiterate. Bishop Alvarez even wanted to stay at Brahmawar in his last days, but his wish did not realize, as Father Narana himself was staying outside the compound of the church along with his adopted son Mr. Piat Meneges. So the dream of Bishop Alvarez having a seminary for Independent Catholic Mission never realized in Brahmawar. In a letter from our Dionysius Metropolitan of Malakkara to Father Narana dated 5th June 1913, it states, I quote, "How can I send a person, one who doesn't know Latin and customs of the people?" Unquote. This is because Father Narana asked a priest to assist him or suggested to ordain Deacon P.G. Koshi as a priest. This shows the real concern of Saint Vattashirilma Dionysius towards the Konkani congregation of Brahmawar, which was shown earlier by His Grace Joseph Ma Dionysius, 5th, and Saint Perumalamar Gregorius towards the Bishop Alvarez and his congregation. They never touched the customs or belief on the congregation in the name of orthodoxy, Eastern Rite, or any other reasons. But in present scenario, people are in dilemma, and the new generation fumbles whether to follow the age-old customs of their ancestors or the Malayali culture in the name of orthodoxy. If the roots are cut off, the tree will not survive. So the Malankara Orthodox Church is showing very much concern towards the Konkani community of Brahmawar. Right from the formation of the Independent Catholic Mission of Goa, Ceylon and Brahmawar were in great contact. It proved by the then Pope Leo XIII Assistant Cardinal Ramble's letter on behalf of the Pope, stating that all the people are under propaganda except some 5 or 6 fishermen of Ceylon and 7 or 8 drunkards and mischiefs of Kalyampur, means Brahmawar. So the Concordat of 1886 between the Pope of Rome and King of Portugal cannot be changed. This shows the relationship between Ceylon, Goa and Brahmawar. So Brahmawar Center, Independent Catholic Mission Center, really helped the Independent Catholic Mission in so many ways and survived till date. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. Now it's open for questions. Now it's open for questions.
Yeah, please.
You mentioned about Soros being sent by Alvarez.
Yes, because he is the person on who brought means from Goa to OTS, Orthodox Theological Seminary, and ordained as full deacon and priest, and sent to several mission centers of his. Yeah, please.
Yeah, Alvarez sent people to different places.
Yes.
And Soros seems to have been missioned by Alvarez to go to Tamil Nadu.
Yes, he is the person on who sent him over there. Yes.
Connecting that, according to the eyewitness account, 4 sub-deacons were ordained as deacons and priests before the consecration of Mar Alvarez. It's clearly stated the names of those 4, as you said, in that, but it was not mentioned in that document who was sent to which place. But very clearly, one thing is there. 3 of them sent to Ceylon and 1 was sent to Kalyan. So maybe the name, of course, but the names you mentioned were true, because I didn't see any records of that. But out of that 3, Soares is described as the Vicar General of Alvarez at a stage. I repeat the question from the last paper and the word paper and the father's question. It may be true that Alvarez assigned this Soares to somewhere, but it doesn't mean that wherever Soares went was on the will of Mar Alvarez, or even without his knowledge. I still strongly believe, after all this, hearing all these things, after a certain period or a certain date, he cut off all relations with the Mar Alvarez and started working himself and pretending as a bishop later.
As you know, in this regard, the documents are very limited. The book which is written in Kannada by a former vicar of Brahmawar, Reverend Father K.T. Murgis, page 37, it states who all are sent, which places. In that it is mentioned like Thoothukudi, then about that Buttelo, and very simple mention are there. Within altogether 8 or 9 lines are there that states these all brothers came from Goa and sent to some mission centers. That is what I have at present. I have the evidence about the other resources or the verbal evidences. We can't rely on these all things. I think.
This is not verbal.
Okay, then eyewitness something.
That is written.
Written. Okay. Now,
on the very same day, there is a chronicle. That's the very same day it was written.
Okay.
And later, it was 4 centuries for Father Soares' work were mentioned in one note. 4 centuries, that is Tirunelveli, Thoothukudi, and places, 2 more places near to that. Not Madurai. No, not the Tirupalli, not Dindigul. Thoothukudi is there.
No, Thoothukudi.
That I will tell you. No, these 2.
Okay, let it. Please.
Other parish cabinet, Parekai, Church of Our Lady of Assumption.
Pardon? I did got that.
The Thoothukudi diocese, at least 3 places are identified as Pagoda concentration. One is the Church of Our Lady of Snows, Basilica, in Thoothukudi town. The second one is at Weba. That is Church of Our Lady of Assumption. The third one is Parekai, which is also Church of Assumption of Our Lady. Those 3 places are very strong.
In Kalyampur also, so many other places was also there. Vidyavar and Kirem and so many. Father Rajesh knows those places. Parodo. It is here the result of Parodo propaganda, that conflict. Anything more to ask regarding that?
I have a question about the identity of the Brahmavad Orthodox Church. It is, as we know, it is the only mission that survived, established by Father Alvarez, and eventually survived. So I'm curious about the spiritual identity and their association with the Malankara Orthodox Church, which is using Malayalam as the main language. What is the ecclesiastical identity of the Brahmavad Church by using not Malayalam language?
Dr. Ray had been there for several times. We are happy with the Malankara Orthodox Church, and recently in the year 2010 2010, it was declared as a diocese of the Malankara Orthodox Church. Out of 30 dioceses, Brahmava diocese is one. Regarding the Malayali and Konkani, this is the only one congregation not using Malayalam in Malankara Orthodox Church. And we are out of only one is left in Brahmava. All the 4 are here from that community. We are doing our level best to make the community survive, and the service is rendering in the mother tongue of the locals, Konkani. We translated each and everything, but certain things are influenced by the Malayali traditions also. Nowadays, some challenges are there. I think we can come over that in the near future.
One more thing I wish to say.
Yeah.
In 1937, Father Pejikoshi stating that the Tiruchirappalli mission as a new one, and the same year, Catholicus Basilis Julius II permitting them to use Latin Rite. That means there was no need for such a new permission if the mission of Father Sovaros was legitimized, because it can be continued. But it said, I had seen that bull also, the Catholicus edict also permitting it, and also Father Pejikoshi states that it's Catholicus is recently now permitted. So that means the Sovaros mission in that area was not legitimized, not known to the Malankara Church.
For the August audience, I am telling this one. Till 1986, means for almost 100 years, we had Latin Rite among us.
In 1986?
1986, till 1986. It is switched on to Syriac Rite completely from 1989.
But in 1987, I attended Latin service at Brahmava Church.
Yes. In that 3 years period, some Sundays Latin service, some Sundays Syrian service was there. And slowly it is got into Syriac Rite. For 3 years, after 3 years, it was from 1989, Syriac Rite only was performed over there.
Am I correct that between the years of the Second Vatican Council and the year when your community switched to the Syrian liturgy, those decades, 2 decades, the Catholic Church in Brahmava or Mangalore were using the new liturgy, whereas you were using the old Latin liturgy. Am I right?
Yes, the Latin Rite switched on to the local languages, and we were practicing the Latin Rite only.
The old Latin.
Yeah, old Latin. We never because the priests, those who are serving never went through Latin seminaries. They taught it by Father Noronna in their initial stage.
And those priests, like Father Koshi, sent from Kerala,
yeah.
Where did they learn Latin?
From Father Noronna, all from same place. Father Koshi, Father Kuriakos, and Father Kuriakos' descendant here is brother's grandson, Father Abraham Kuriakos. Father, please. He is the one who is got into touch in the initial stage of our Sri Lanka mission. Okay, thank you. And Father Katie Burgess. Father, please.
Father, yes, please. Father David, you owe your origin to Alvarez. When he started the Roman Catholic Church, he followed only Latin Rite. Then what was the need to switch over to the other rite?
For 100 years there was no Konkani priest. There were, but very limited. Okay. In the year 1986, both the priests, Father K.K. Kuriakose and Father K.T. Varghese, they were the instrumental to retain the mission center as it is. And they both died within the span of 3 months. 11th January 1986, Father K.K. Kuriakose demise, and 23rd March 1986, Father K.T. Varghese expired. Then there was a chaos between the people, and then Malankara Orthodox Church took the initiative, and the last vicar of Tiruchirappalli, Father Ramban N.J. Thomas, Dr. N.J. Thomas, was sent to Brahma mission, and he was little bit known about this Latin rite and everything, and he was sent to the mission center, and then along with the other two Pattanapuram Ajahns were there. Father Lazarus Thomas, he was there in Tiruchirappalli. Then T.M. Kuriakose, Father. They, as a team, work on there. Among them, Father Lazarus Thomas served in Latin for a very limited period, for 3 years, and then it was switched on to Syriac. This is just because lack of priests. Then again, after a decade, we got into seminary. First, our Father Ashwin Fernandez is the Secretary of Catholicos, and then after 2 years, we got into seminary, and thus later on Father Ajit, Father Noel, and now on seminarian is there in OTS, Orthodox Seminary Kottayam. He is also serving. So people are coming to serve in the vineyard of God.
Father, the exact reason.
Things from Latin to because Master of
Father Arunda, being a parish priest, serving in a diocese, he can say that only. But I am not so. But I will tell you the truth. Father Dr. N.J. Thomas Ramban, he was deadly against using Latin rite. That was the exact reason.
Not from me.
Because he told me.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Father, we have thank you, Father, for the exciting papers. It's a difficult time, but all now we will Father. Now we can wait for tea.
The problem
uploaded presentation. Oh, that was from
There is a difference. I don't know why.
How could be the pro?
But
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Okay, that's good.
I did with my business of that.
Okay, I like to remind you that things is not like it.
There was a
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Wow, I have never heard about Yeah, I understand. Because this night, this is estimated. I visit because yeah, over there, and I will share this last round because I feel great. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Same, that's why. No, you want to.
No, I'm already on my I'm just trying to figure out, for instance, how can I project this video up there?
You need to connect it to projector.
Oh, this is not project. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Already connected.
Yeah, but I don't know why it doesn't show reflector.
Just got some materials from our archives. I did not review all this one.
Yeah, exactly.
Where is the remote control?
No, this I send you also. This church made it the bishop.
Okay. Now Chaldean church.
Chaldean church. Next to Chaldean East Chaldean.
Yeah, East Chaldean, but
Yeah,
East Chaldean.
We went for research. We met with the pet guy there, Chaldean church.
That is in Iraq.
No, here in Trishur they had photos.
Are there?
Yeah. I sent just here.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
that zoom on that one.
That one?
Clarity, yeah. See the clarity. Is that
No.
off the light?
That is, the light is coming there, no? From
Yeah,
here.
I think no.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the clarity will be there.
You're intelligent, father.
Yes. No, it's okay.
You're intelligent, father.
Huh?
You're intelligent, not like
Yeah, intelligent.
Everyone, now it's time to start our last session. The last panel, the topic is connectivity and globalization. And in the first half of the session, we have heard two papers from Father Arundas and from Father David Krasta. And now we are going to start the third paper given by Professor Dr. Adrian Herman. Dr. Herman is the Professor for Religion and Society and the Director of the Department of Religion Studies for Internationale Wissenschaft, Universität Bonn, where I live. Since 2017, he has been working on a German Research Foundation project called the Independent Catholic Movement in late 19th and early 20th century Asia. And in this project, Professor Herman is working on the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, the so-called the Independent Church of Philippines. Today, he's going to give a presentation entitled The Independent Catholic Movement in the Philippines around 1900 and its international connections. Yes, please. Hi, Adrian, you can start.
Hello. Hello, I hope you can hear me well. Thank you so much for the invitation, and thanks again to Wade for organizing this wonderful conference. I will start by giving a short statement and words of congratulations as a greeting, which has been sent to me by Professor Klaus Kuschorke from the University of Munich, which some of you might know. He has been to Sri Lanka many times, and he wanted to give his words of congratulations. So I'm going to start with his statement. Dear colleagues and friends, warmest greetings from Munich to Colombo, where a remarkable and most promising conference on the local and global history of the Buona Church is being held. This conference is important for various reasons. It brings together some of the leading experts in the history of Christianity in Sri Lanka, India, and Asia. It focuses on a new area of research, the long neglected and marginalized history of the independent Catholics in India, Goa, and Ceylon in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, up to the present day. By doing so, it contributes significantly to a better understanding of religious pluralism in India and colonial Ceylon, taking into account the various forms of Catholic presence in both countries around the turn from the 19th to 20th centuries. In addition, it offers new insights into processes of intra-Christian globalization and trans-regional networking among non-Roman Catholic churches in Asia since the late 19th century. So, in Asia and Africa since 1900, and the way how they developed and interacted and formed trans-regional networks has been extensively discussed, so the case of the Protestants. Now, with the case of the independent Catholics of Goa and Ceylon, an important example from the Catholic world has become the topic of an international conference and is being placed in its proper Asian and global context. I, Klaus Kuschorke, regret very much not to have been able to attend this important meeting. I would like to congratulate Dr. Jiang Wei and the other conveners for initiating and organizing the conference. And I am confident that you have had fruitful discussions and beneficiary exchange of thoughts. Greetings from Munich, November 22nd, 2018. So this was the statement from Klaus Kuschorke, Professor of Church History at the University of Munich. I will now start with my own presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Sure.
Yes, yes we can.
Good. So I will talk about the independent Catholic movement in the Philippines around 1900. In 1902, the publicist, folklorist, historian, political activist, and religious rebel Isabella de los Reyes y Florentino, on the right side, proclaimed the establishment of an independent Philippine church, the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, and he named the Filipino priest Gregorio Atayman as its first supreme bishop. This religious revolution taking place in the Philippines around 1900 has been the subject of a large variety of studies over the course of the last century, with widely varying assessments of the importance, background, and history of the schism in Filipino Catholicism. Some central aspects of the history of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, as well as the figure of Isabella de los Reyes, has contributed to the emergence of a revised understanding of religious change in the Philippines around 1900 that has been less influenced by the confessional conflicts which had followed much of the earlier historicity. We might hope that this conference will contribute also to a similar perspective in Sri Lanka. My presentation will have 4 parts. I will talk about the early periodicals of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente. I will then give an example of a debate in the Philippine public sphere in 1903. I will talk about contacts between the Philippine Church and the independent Catholics of India, Goa, and Ceylon in 1903, as they called themselves then. And I will give some thoughts on the question of a trans-regional and transcontinental indigenous Christian public sphere. So, Isabella de los Reyes has been described by one of the Filipino historians as follows. He was the country's most unorthodox intellectual. He waged a campaign against Spanish and American rule, was incarcerated in Manila's central prison and Barcelona's infamous Montjuic Castle, consorted with anarchists and socialists, established a rebel church, and founded the Philippine labor movement. He was espioned in his private life. He married thrice, a Tagala, a Spaniard, and a Chinese mestizo, and sired 27 children. He is reported to have said, "There is enough chaos in me for God to create another world." So this is Isabella de los Reyes. Not all of the aspects of the early history of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente have received the same attention in newer studies. This especially concerns the early periodicals published by the Church in 1903 and 1904, and their role in developing the new Church's identity and public voice. Continuing some other recent explorations of these questions, the public, as well as reactions in international news. My case study of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente forms part of a comparative project on indigenous Christian elites from Asia and Africa around 1900 and their journals and periodicals that has now resulted in a number of publications. This project is interested in the possibilities for mutual awareness that resulted from the emergence of indigenous Christian periodicals, journals, and newspapers around 1900. These facilitated indirect and later direct contacts between indigenous Christian elites in Africa and Asia, as well as early forms of trans-regional and transcontinental networking. So here you can see the 2 main publications that have come out of our project so far, which give a history of the periodicals and newspapers published by Christians in Asia and Africa around 1900, with case studies on India, on the Philippines, West Africa, and South Africa. On the left side, in green, is the source book, in which in English you can find from these journals and newspapers a lot of excerpts on different topics. And on the right, a book which is mostly in German with some English articles, is the study of these texts. The Iglesia Filipina Independiente in August 1902 was a late result of the long-standing struggle of the Filipino clergy against institutional discrimination and the hegemony of the friars, the Catholic friars in the Philippines, over the course of the 19th century. The early periodicals, published by a number of activists connected to the IFI in the years 1903 and 1904, served as the church's official organs and published important documents like the church's constitution, an outline of its organizational structure, as well as pastoral letters. In addition to this, they gave the IFI a public voice, bringing its concerns and its own interpretations of events to the Philippine public. In doing so, the writers, especially Isabel de los Reyes, engaged in a debate with other periodicals, like the Catholic Dominican friars Libertas. At the same time, and in addition to these local concerns, its early journals also provided the IFI with their way of presenting the new Filipino national church as part of a global Christian community. The first periodical, published from January to August 1903 with 29 issues, was La Verdad. This, you can see the first pages of the number 4 here. This was edited and run by the American Arthur W. Crouch, together with Manuel Ceres Burgos, a Filipino, for the first 12 issues. After this American stopped working as an editor, Ceres Burgos took over the main editorship. The second periodical, La Iglesia Filipina Independiente, Revista Católica, was edited by Isabel de los Reyes, which I talked about before. The Workers' Union's paper, La Dirección del Obrero, of which 20 issues were published, was also edited and published by Los Reyes in the same layout and format as the church paper, and it was distributed in the whole Philippines, in todo Filipinas, together with La Iglesia Filipina Independiente, Revista Católica. After its early demise, this third paper lived on as a section for the workers that appeared regularly in this one, La Iglesia Filipina Independiente. Church's motivation for beginning to publish its own journals from the very beginning. This text, entitled Our Aspiration, appeared on the first page of the first issue in October 1903, and it reads as follows. We sincerely aspire to make a periodical that deserves the title of Christian. It would be negligent if we weren't hoping to find our success in fighting systematically against the Romanists, exploiting the passions of our co-religionists, and dividing more and more our compatriots that profess different religions. On the contrary, we will show to our people that it's proper to each civilized and well-educated person to respect other beliefs. The author of this text makes it clear that La Iglesia Filipina Independiente, Revista Católica, understands itself as a Christian press organ, which will give voice to the Church's perspective in the public sphere, and claims to attempt to engage in a critical dialogue with other religious institutions and the general public. At the same time, and must make sure that the IFI is not perceived as a disturbance to the public order or revolutionary force. On the contrary, this text, as well as over the whole print run of these journals, the authors stress again and again that the Church's purpose is purely religious, and its publicly expressed opinions are attempts to contribute to civil and friendly dialogue with the authorities and other religions. Nevertheless, The Church understands itself as asserting its right to speak for Filipino Catholics and the Filipino clergy, long oppressed under Spanish rule. So how does this look in practice? The Iglesia Filipina Independiente had founded its own periodical early in its history because the church leaders were convinced that having their own voice in the Philippine public sphere was extremely important for communicating with the faithful and engaging in public debate. The way in which these debates proceeded can be glanced from how the periodicals engaged with articles published in other journals. An analysis of these public debates shows that the IFI leadership read and engaged with other. At the same time, articles were read and commented on by the authors of other periodicals, like the periodicals of the Dominican friars, which was called Libertas, Liberty. On October 23, 1903, the periodical La Patria, another periodical in the Philippine public sphere, published a short article on the current status of the religious conflict in the Philippines. This article was itself a reaction to news that had been published somewhere else by Americans. And in this article, La Patria, on the religious conflict, it states the following. If the information that has been published about the intentions of Monsignor Harty, the Archbishop-elect of Manila, in some periodicals edited here is correct, which we believe it is, the existence of the Aglipayan, so the Iglesia Filipina Independiente schism, obviously loses all the foundation that supports it. What is happening here? This author argues that when, as it seems to have been the proposal of the Archbishop, the Roman Catholic Archbishop-elect of Manila, the Filipino clergy will now also allowed to be appointed to any ecclesiastical position, even the important ones, then the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, the independent Catholic Church, will not have any reason for its existence anymore and will only be a great obstacle to the solution of religious conflicts in the Philippines. This statement that it only takes this positioning by the Archbishop-elect of Manila for the Iglesia Filipina Independiente to lose all the reasons for its existence seems to have enraged the IFI leadership, and especially Isabelo de los Reyes, the founder that I talked about before. Since in November 1st, 1903, the periodical of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente published an open letter of Isabelo de los Reyes to Pedro Paterno, a Filipino intellectual and politician who had been Prime Minister of the First Republic. Now he was the editor of La Patria, in which this quote that you've just seen on the screen was appearing. In the letter sent to this periodical, titled Lack of Passionate Understanding, Isabelo quotes a longer passage from the La Patria article and argues, well, we reply that the one who is really vain and ridiculous is the author of that sorry paragraph, tried to ridicule our most respectable compatriot priest, so the priest of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente. And even if it was in your heart that in future Filipino priests would also be appointed to important positions in the church, do you not know how far these promises are from their loyal execution? Isabelo goes on to present the Iglesia Filipina Independiente as an internationally recognized church. Quote, at the enormous meeting which took place in the last year under the presidency of the famous American orator, Dr. Pentecost, with thousands of American, European, Asian, and Filipino Christians, all the foreign churches, with the exception of the Roman one, have recognized the Iglesia and congratulated the Filipinos on the founding of this new church. So this was his position. The Iglesia Filipina Independiente, he defends them against the accusation of being no more than a sorry mirror image of the Roman Church, and highlights various doctrinal differences that go far beyond. At the same time, calling on the so-called international recognition that his church has received, in Isabelo's opinion, he argues that his church, the independent Catholics of the Philippines, are the progressive spearhead of Filipino religion. This was not the last word. This characterization of the conflict in the periodical of the La Iglesia Filipina Independiente did not stand unchallenged. On November 9, 1903, the Dominican Friars paper, Libert, published a column by Quicoy, a regular columnist for the periodical, who was, this is a pen name of the Dominican friar Francisco Marin Sola. In his column, he comments on this dispute that we have now heard about. He writes, "Do you know, dear readers, that Mr. Pedro Paterno has roused the anger of the Aglipayan flock?" So the Aglipayans are the Iglesia Filipina Independiente. "About 12 days ago, La Patria, the organ of Mr. Paterno, has published an editorial about the religious conflict. But how naive are you, Isabel little phrase, and you would leave so satisfied from this reunion in which the Protestants have admirably pulled your leg. Naive. Do you not know what Dr. Pentecost, one of the missionaries in the Philippines, thinks of the Filipinos? And do you not know what this other Protestant minister, Mr. Strunz, has said? That all the churches, minus the Roman, have recognized and praised the Aglipayan church. If you knew how the foreigners are pulling your leg, you are poor Isabello." This debate between La Patria, La Iglesia Filipina Independiente Revista Católica, and Libertas allows us to see that the religious conflict was a major topic of debate in the Philippine public sphere of the time. Through its journals, the IFI attempted to present its own perspective on the schism to a larger public. The interventions did not remain unread and unnoticed. But what's that by the IFI? The exchange detailed, this exchange here detailed, did not remain the only dispute, but we cannot go into much more detail here. So now I will move on to the contacts with the independent Catholics of India, Goa, and Ceylon, which will be of important interest to you, I guess. The Iglesia Filipina Independiente, in its early period of existence, already attempted to establish contacts with other Christian groups and was itself contacted by other independent Catholic movements in Asia, Europe, and the USA. So they were in contact with the old Catholic Church in Switzerland and with independent Catholics in the United States. And these early journals that I just talked about, the Iglesia Filipina Independiente and the Revista Católica and La Verdad, they served to publicize these contacts that the Iglesia Filipina had. They served to publicize these contacts to its constituency, and then these periodicals and newspapers were also sent abroad as propaganda material about the church. Another independent Catholic group began to establish contacts with the Iglesia Filipina Independiente in 1903. These, and you're very familiar with them, were what they themselves called themselves at the time, Independent Catholics of Ceylon, or Independent Catholic Church of Ceylon, Goa, and India. And their trustee, Stephen Silva, wrote from Sri Lanka to the Philippines, to Aglipai, on April 23, 1903. As we know, the Iglesia Filipina Independiente was not the only independent Catholic church in Asia around 1900. Even though at that time the Iglesia Filipina Independiente might have been the largest. In Goa and Ceylon, after a longer period of struggle, it had resulted in the proclamation of the Independent Catholic Church of Ceylon, Goa, and India that you have talked about in your conference now, in the late 1880s. This had to do with the abolishment of the principle of patronado in the second half of the 19th century that had caused unrest among Goan and Ceylonese Catholics. And under the leadership of Antonio Francisco Xavier Alvarez and Dr. Pedro Manuel Lisboa Pinto, they had separated themselves from Rome and formed the Independent Catholic Church of Ceylon, Goa, and India. In the first year, the church apparently, so according to the Ceylonese census, had about 5,000 members, but especially because of the lack of qualified priests, by 1903 the situation had considerably worsened. Some years later, these troubles increased. But prior to this decline, to this problem of lack of priests, the Ceylonese independent Catholics had sought support from the Iglesia Filipina Independiente in the Philippines, which they understood as having the IFI, in an American magazine, their trustee, Stephen Silver, wrote to Agitpai on April 23, 1903. He described the difficulties that they faced in dealing and continuing with their work, since they cannot get sufficient priests to work independent of Rome. So this, I hope you can see it in the presentation, was the letter that arrived in the Philippines in 1903 and was sent from Ceylon, from Stephen Silver. And it was sent to the bishop of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente in the Philippines. He writes here, having accidentally read a paragraph in an American magazine about your movement in the capital of the Philippine Islands, I beg to write you the following. We, present called the independent Catholics of Ceylon, find difficult to continue in this state, for we cannot get sufficient priests to work independent of Rome. Will your lordship be able to send us 2 priests intelligent and good in their moral conduct? Most of our people speak Portuguese, and if you can send 1 or 2 Spanish priests here will be very good, as we could easily understand them. Some months later, a second letter from Ceylon reached the Iglesia Filipina Independiente Bishop of Manila, Jose Evangelista. Referring to an answer from June 4 that Silva had apparently received from Evangelista, together with several copies of the periodical La Verdad, this letter was dated July 11. So this is the second letter. And with this letter, we know now that there was an exchange of letters between the Philippines and Ceylon at that time, because this letter tells us that the first letter had been received and there had been a letter back, and they had exchanged also their periodicals. My research in the Philippines and also the research of Dr. Wei Jiang have not yet been able to find the Philippine letters that have been sent to Ceylon, to Stephen Silva. Maybe these letters are still somewhere in a family archive or somewhere in an archive in Sri Lanka, and it would be very interesting for establishing the history of these exchanges to find these letters. So this is one of the challenges of historical research at the moment, that we have these letters that were sent from Ceylon to the Philippines because they were kept in the archive of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, and maybe somewhere in Sri Lanka these letters that were sent from the Philippines that are mentioned here in these letters are also still kept. So this would be very interesting if we could find them. So this is the second letter. And here, Stephen Silva have also received several copies of La Verdad, published in Spanish in the native language of the Philippines. By this mail, I sent you 2 pamphlets published by us, one in English and the other in Portuguese, as spoken in Ceylon. The difficulty at present is that we have no priests for the work of our mission. If your lordship can manage to give us 1 or 2 priests to work in our mission, it will be a great help. We want to know the strength of the Filipino Independent Catholic Church. How many bishops and priests are there? How many Christians? How many churches? When did this church begin? While the definite history of this interaction is still to be written, some central aspects can so be pointed out now. We have not been able to find these letters, as I said, that were sent from the Philippines to Sri Lanka. But we know that the IFI had replied and even sent some issues of the periodical La Verdad to Ceylon. Transient as it may have been, this exchange therefore represents a rare example of known South-South communication between 2 independent Catholic churches in Asia in the early 20th century. Once again, highlighting the role of the IFI periodicals in this exchange, it is interesting to note that the IFI also published these letters that they received from Ceylon. They published the first letter in La Verdad in a Spanish translation and the second time in a Tagalog translation in the native language of the Philippines. Likewise, the second letter appeared in the last issue of La Verdad in the original English, as well as in a Spanish and a Tagalog translation. These multiple publications of the letters speak to the importance that the early leadership of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente attributed to them as representing the interests their church demonstrated by independent Asian Catholics in another country. In this presentation, I have attempted to argue that the periodicals of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente were of central importance to the new church in its early years. As a source for writing the history of this movement, their content, like various pastoral letters, the church's constitution and catechism, etc., has long been well known and has been republished in various collections of historical sources. The periodicals themselves, however, had not been studied closely. Yet, in reflecting on the issues discussed above, they emerge as central organs of propaganda through which the church established its own voice in the Philippine public sphere and communicated its perspective on important topics and events to its constituency. Likewise, they made use of the periodicals to debate with other journals, like the Dominicans' Libertas or Pedro Paterno's La Patria. In building the first contacts with other independent Catholic movements in Asia and beyond, the Iglesia Filipina Independiente also sent copies of its periodicals to them. Just one example of an international movement of Catholic independency. So these periodicals were very important, but also, of course, in other independent Catholic movements, similar periodicals exist, like the Independent Catholic, that you well know, that is published by the Independent Catholics in Ceylon in the 1890s. So these periodicals by independent Catholic movements are very important. We should study them more closely. At the same time, these IFFI periodicals in the Philippines, just like these other periodicals in South Africa, West Africa, and India that were part of the project I talked about in the beginning, they contributed to the emergence of what could be called a trans-regional and transcontinental indigenous Christian public sphere around 1900. So a sphere of exchange between like-minded independent movements that all had their own publications. For historians of world Christianity, indigenous Christian periodicals, newspapers, and journals are important and as of yet quite underexplored sources of information about African and Asian Christians and their churches in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These publications served as mediums of churchly, religious, and political commentary on a local level, but also informed their constituencies about what was going on in other parts of the world, and especially about the lives and struggles of indigenous Christians and other so-called mission fields in colonial societies. They enabled early forms of mutual observation between different indigenous Christian elites in different parts of the world, and provided the first step towards indirect and indirect contacts between Christians of different countries and regions. In all this, the notion of an indigenous Christian public sphere should not be understood to refer to an essentialized understanding of what can be considered indigenous or native, but rather builds upon a relational term that refers to the emergence of a counter-public that was not identical with and often stood in opposition to the public generated by the Western-dominated missionary channels of communication. While much attention has been paid in recent years to missionary journals and missionary networks from the West, a focus on the media like the periodicals of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente or the independent Catholics of India, Goa, and Ceylon can contribute to a polycentric perspective on the history of world Christianity that is particularly interested in early contacts between Christian elites of different Asian and African countries. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Adrian, for your inspiring presentation. Now, this is the question time. Is there any question or comment?
Yes. Actually, before the Independent Catholic Mission of Ceylon contacting Malankara Orthodox Church, there was a report or a newspaper report observed by Apostolic Delegate of Propaganda Fede, Monsieur Oiti in Goa, that this Padrado Defense Association has approached Patriarch of Constantinople. So do you have any information on that? That's the first question. The second question is towards 1938, the same Stephen Silva had also approached Greek Orthodox Church, and there was also a Greek Orthodox priest coming down to BuonaMonte Church and staying there for 3 months and there was also discussions happening in Greek Orthodox Synod about accepting this independent Catholic mission into theirs, and which did not succeed, and any information further on that. So that's it.
Yes, so first to the second question. What is very interesting are these different contexts that these movements, independent movements, made over the course then of the 20th century. So you mentioned, for example, the question of connection with Greek Orthodox Church, and that was also a connection that was thought about in the Philippines. They also were hoping that maybe some Greek priests could come to the Philippines and give more legitimacy to their movements. And then later on in the Philippines, the Iglesia Filipina Independiente also started a relationship with the American Episcopal Church. So now they are working very closely, and they have a seminary together with the Episcopal Church in the Philippines. So this, of course, also always depends on theological debates and some theological compatibility, and the way that the theology develops over the course of the 20th century. There might be quite different developments, much more unorthodox and kind of Unitarian Christianity for a while, and then came back to an Orthodox position. And so we always have to look at these theological developments and at the different relationships that that allowed the churches to establish. And maybe the first question I couldn't understand completely acoustically, so maybe Dr. Jian, you can repeat the question.
Can you repeat the question, please, Sujit?
Yeah. Before independent Catholic mission, the first one is the Padrado Defense Association. Before it had contact with the Malankara Church, in 1886, the Apostolic Delegate of Propaganda Fide, Monsieur Aiti, had reported that he has seen a newspaper clipping in Goa that Padrado Defense Association from Ceylon had contacted Patriarch of Constantinople for help. So have you heard about that or any figures?
Yes, so I cannot say anything specific. Quite important, and I think this is something that this conference that you are holding is a very first step in ramifying this, which is that the history of world Christianity over the last 20, 30 years has now taken into account much more the different local perspective of churches and Christian movements in all parts of the world, but is still very much dominated by Western missionary history and a Western perspective, in that sense that there were lots of contacts and connections and exchanges between many Christian movements in Asia that had nothing to do with the Western missionary channels, that we do not know much about, and that much more history and historiographical study has to be done in these regards. And I think this is one example where you point to that these sorts of exchanges need much more research if we really want to have a complete picture of the history of Christianity in Asia in the 19th and 20th century.
So my question is, in the early stages, especially up to 1900, the independent Catholic movements of Philippines ever thought of changing the doctrines of Roman Catholic Church to something else? And the second part, continuing the first question, their search, is it true that their search for another partner, another denominational factor, just for the continuation of episcopal succession alone, or they really need some sort of doctrinal change from Roman Catholic doctrines?
Yes, so if I understood correctly, Philippines and the movement in Sri Lanka and India and Goa was that in the Philippines the movement was very much a modernist movement that moved very far away between 1900 and 1930 from the dogmatic orthodoxy of Roman Catholic Church. They went much more in the direction of Unitarian Christianity, and lots of liberal thought that they imported also, or that they were in conversation with from thinkers in Europe and the United States. And only after the death of the first archbishop, then they moved slowly back towards a more orthodox position, which allowed them to establish the contact with the Episcopal Church in the Philippines. So this is the history in the Philippines, and it might be quite different from history in Sri Lanka at the time. And the other question of apostolic succession, this is one of the issues, if I understood correctly that was the question, that very much occupied the minds of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente in the beginning. Because on the one hand, they wanted to stress their independence, so they did not want to need to depend on any other churches or movements or leadership. So they tried to find theological arguments for why the ordination of priests is also possible, and the ordination of bishops and so on, without any outside help. So they tried some biblical arguments to find some for this reasoning. On the other hand, they were always looking for which are the contacts that they could have with Old Catholic Church in Europe and with Orthodox churches and so on, and what are the possibilities of establishing a line of apostolic succession for the Iglesia Filipina Independiente. And in between these two ways of trying to go alone and trying to do it on their own, and also the challenges in the beginning of the history of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente.
I have a question. Dr. Adrian, it was a very wonderful presentation. Since Father Alvarez was a journalist, he had published a lot in the 1880s, 90s. But during 1900 and so on, did Philippine Church had any periodicals are circulated from India? Did you gone through any journals or periodicals?
Yes, so I did not find any in the Philippines. The letters that I quoted note that there were at least some pamphlets sent to the Philippines. Maybe these were publications by Lisboa Pinto, could be, and other things that were sent from Ceylon at the time to the Philippines, but they have not been preserved, as far as I'm aware, in the Philippine archives. So I could not find any Indian newspapers, periodicals, or pamphlets sent from Sri Lanka or from India to the Philippines.
So I'm following his question. Alvarez published his works from Goa and Ceylon, not from the British India then. So probably it will be tagged under Goa or Ceylon, not under the title India.
Yeah, so there are publications from Goa that are, of course, preserved in the Portugal National Library. So there we have found the requisite periodicals and also pamphlets and so on, but we did not find any in the Philippines yet.
Any more questions? Please.
Orthodox Christian, we are all living in this group. My question is, how dogmatic influence of German theologians like Dogma, Schulze, is it there also for with the Philippine Church or Spanish churches? Theologians, German theologians, Dogma, Schulze, Friedrich.
Wei, could you maybe repeat the question to me?
Can you speak loud again, please?
I just want to know, in the Spanish-speaking world, or rather Iberian world, the influence of Dolmer, German theologian, should say Friedrich, in their thinking. Is there a dogmatic influence of them in these studies? Could you find it?
It's independent Catholic movement.
Yes. Independent Catholic.
Yeah. I have not direct to the Philippines. In the beginning, it was much more a kind of progressivist, modernist movement. So they looked more to liberal thinkers in Europe, and they quoted some scientists, and they were interested in the relationship between religion and science. But as far as I'm aware, they did not read or engage with too much of that contemporary theology at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Next one.
Yes, it's a somewhat a practical question, Professor Andreas. I'm a Dominican who has spent 7 years in the Philippines, and I have gone to some of those churches personally, and also Father Aglipa's house in Vigad, and that's a museum now. But what I experienced was there's no dialogue as such between Catholic Church and independent church. We say most of those things happen in our university, St. Thomas University, because all Spanish at that time. I think that continuing until now. When I visited their cathedral at that place, and then one priest came and asked, "Who are you?" Then I said, "I'm a Dominican priest, Catholic." Then, "What are you doing here?" So that kind of relationship I experienced when I was there. And if you ask any Catholic priest, they say, "Oh, they are nothing like that." So I have never experienced any dialogue between these independent churches and the Catholic Church in the Philippines. Is there any dialogue as such as you know, Dr. Andreas?
Yes, I do think that slowly the relationships is getting better. It is true, so for the longest time, the history of this movement was a very, very conflictual issue. And the writing of the history in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s was always a question of confessional debates and confessional conflicts. So the most important historians in the beginning that wrote the 4-volume history of this schism of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente were 2 Jesuits that wrote it very much from a Roman Catholic perspective. And then there was another Jesuit, John Schumacher, an important historian of Catholicism in the Philippines, who also wrote from a Catholic perspective. And only since the year 2000, more or less, this has been kind of more attempt at telling the story without this confessional lens as the starting point. Now, for example, Isabelo de los Reyes that I talked about, who wrote a lot of theological writings that on the one hand might have moved away from Christian Orthodox dogmatic theology, but also he was very much trying to give a Filipino version of theology. And now he, for example, is a forerunner of Filipino theology. So they are trying to reassess this history of schism, not so much as kind of a dark and sad history of the breakup of the church, but rather of a kind of anti-colonial struggle in which people maybe might have made mistakes, but were also important things to learn. And so I think that these kind of movements and these kind of things are now starting to be seen a little differently. You can also see, for example, in the Jesuit-run university in Manila, in the Ateneo de Manila, one of the most important universities in the Philippines. Now there is a member of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente that is the chair of the history department. So this would also not have happened at the Jesuit school maybe just 20 years ago or so. So things are, I think, changing a bit, and also more exchange between the now Obispo Maximo, the Archbishop of Iglesia Filipina Independiente, and the Roman Catholic Church might be happening.
Next question.
So this is the thing, yeah.
Dr. David, my question is about the remote causes for the independent church movement. What could be the remote causes? Because I guess, or could be possible, the philosophical change in the European academics in the 19th century with the revival of rationalism and the development of rationalistic philosophy, they also started questioning the dogma and also the ecclesiastical structures. And that had a lot of influence on the church and the church's life. Can we say that this change in the philosophical perspective had some effect on the independent church movement at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. I do think that this is one of the two things that we have to look at. So on the one hand, like I said, the result or the beginning of the independent movement in the Philippines was the result of a longer struggle of the Filipino clergy and clerics and priests against the domination of the Spanish friars. So for the history of Spanish presence and colonialism in the Philippines, there was always the question of what could be the role of Filipino clergy, Filipino pastors, Filipino priests in the church. And even though in the beginning of the 19th century already they had taken over some parishes and they had been allowed to take some important roles, then, especially when there was the return of the Jesuits to the Philippines, some of these were taken away from Filipino clergy. And so it was in doubt whether they would actually ever been allowed to play important roles in the church. And the last straw in this sense was that when the Roman Catholic Church, after the Americans took over the administration in the Philippines, then they decided not to replace the Spanish bishops with Filipino bishops, but they replaced them with other European and with American bishops. And at this point, the Filipino clergy, for example, in the case of E4, the split. This is the one historical reason. But the other one, as you have indicated, I think is very clearly some philosophical, theological reasons, whereas especially figures like Isabelo de los Reyes and Gregorio Aguirre, who were the leaders of this movement, were very much influenced by these philosophical changes in theology and these questionings of dogmatic positions, the question of the relationship between religion and science, rationalism, questions of miracles and the existence of miracles deep in front of the mind of these two Christian intellectuals in the Philippines at the time. So I think these two, the local struggle and the philosophical changes, are the important causes.
Okay, I think we have doubled the time as we planned for individual presentation discussion, but I think it is a useful discussion among, especially within this comparative research project. We have to know what is the other model of research is going on, and I think this gives us a very good case for reflection that we are going to start very soon. And thank you very much, Adrian, for your virtual participation. And I hope you can come to Sri Lanka physically next time if we organize a second conference on this topic. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much for having me, and thank you again for organizing this conference. It's a very important endeavor. Thank you to Dr. Jiang, and thank you to all the local organizers. We are very happy from University of Bonn to support this endeavor and to further the study of the history of Christianity in Sri Lanka. I have been there only once in 2015, but I hope to return soon, and then I hope to get to know some of you then. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.
the following session will be a roundtable discussion, and okay. So I would suggest that we take. I know. Yes, of course. So the next session, the roundtable discussion, will start with a brief presentation by Professor Father M.O. John. And I suggest that we now take 3 minutes of break because for the roundtable discussion. No? Okay. Okay.
So you don't want any break, so we will continue.
Because they
This
raised
is
to the hands.
in continuation. I will not take much time. This is in continuation with the presentation just we had heard, the Independence Church movement in Philippines, and the paper which we heard from Father David Casta about the movement in India, in Brahmavar. So I wanted to tell you 4 things about this independent church movement. The theme, the subject allotted to me was the role of the old seminary. Old seminary is the Orthodox Theological Seminary, the present Theological Seminary of the Malankara Orthodox Church. And Marva Alvarez was ordained there, and I had a good connection with the old seminary. So the role of the old seminary in this independent church movement happened in Goa or in the western coast. Old seminary here understood as the Malankara Orthodox Church. We can say that it is not only a theological college. Now at present it is theological college, Orthodox Theological Seminary. Theological education is going on there. But at that time, during the 19th century, at least from 1820, it was the headquarters of the Malankara Orthodox Church. From 1820 till 1934, we can see that it was the real headquarters of the Malankara Orthodox Church. So what all role old seminary has is the role of the Malankara Church in the movement, that we should understand in that way. During that time, the contacts, it was theological seminary. At the same time, the Malankara Metropolitan or the head of the church, they were living there. So the relationship we can see. The first point which I wanted to tell you is that there was an independent movement. There was a movement against foreign authorities, foreign reign, foreign rule in India. Malankara Church, or the Church of the St. Thomas Christians, were founded by St. Thomas, and it was there till the arrival of the Portuguese. In 1498, Portuguese navigator Vasco da Gama invented a new sea route to India, and he landed there. And following him, many Portuguese and Italian missionaries came to India. They found the Syrian Christians there. They wanted to convert them to the Roman Catholic Church. So that movement, that missionary activities went on, and we can see that at the Synod of Diambar, that is in 1498, at the Synod of Diambar is the culmination of the Latinization or Romanization of the Indian Christians. That was there. But there were opposition, and the Indian people opposed it. And it resulted in 1653 in the Queen and Cross Oath. The church was divided into 2. By the Queen and Cross Oath, or during that time, the church was divided into 2. One keeping allegiance with Rome. That group is known as Padayakur. And that rejected the allegiance with Rome is known as the Puttankur. And there was a struggle that this Queen and Cross Oath and the Synod of Diambar and the succeeding events, all these events was for the appointment of foreign clergy on the Indian Christians. The Qurbana oath, we can see that through Latinization and Portuguesization of the Indian and the Syrian tradition of the Thomas Christians, the hitherto existing contact with the East Syrian Church was also terminated. Due to the imposition of compulsory celibacy on the clergy, it was they who suffered the worst fate of all. And we can see that the traditional authority and position of the Archdeacon of all India was thoroughly jeopardized and mutilated when the new office Latin Archbishop and the policy of centralization of church administration under him was introduced and enforced. So that was the problem, foreign rule. And there was a struggle. And the struggle resulted in the Qurbana oath. The church was divided into two. Even though one group came under the Roman Catholic rule, they also wanted independence. That independent movement was there. At least from 1653 we can see that. Even though one group joined the Roman Catholic Church, no Indian was appointed as the prelate of the Indian Christians. Always foreign Christians were appointed. Whether it was by propaganda fide or patrodo, different missionary, Carmelites or Jesuits, none of these groups, missionaries, wanted an Indian to be the head of the church. Either it is Catholic or the other groups. The other group also, the Puthangur, they came under the supremacy of the relationship with the Patriarch of Antioch. And the Patriarch of Antioch was also trying to impose their rule upon these Christians. So this struggle was going on. And from 1653 we can see that till 1896, all the rulers of the Syro-Malabar group or the Padegur or those who joined the Roman Catholic Church was foreigners. Only by 1896, some Indians, native people were appointed as bishops. So that struggle was there. From 1653 to 1896, we can see. During this time, some delegation was sent, so many delegations sent. Karyatil, Dr. Joseph Melpan, Paramakar, Thomas Kathinar, they were all sent to Rome via Portuguese, via Lisbon, to get independence for the Indian Christians. But that independence was not granted. That was the background, and these two groups, the Puthangur and Padegur, tried to join together during the time of Dionysius I, Marthoma VI, that was from 1765 to 1808. During this period, there were union efforts between these two groups, and they were also against either to the Patriarch of Antioch or to the Pope of Rome. So these two groups tried to join together. Another thing was during this time, in 1880s, we can see the government schism. That was also going on. So all these movements were, in one way or other, against foreign rule or foreign domination. And that movement got an influence in all these Christians, in all these groups. And that is resulted in the form. The government schism was also there, and the fight between the propaganda fide and patrodo was there. As a result of all these fights, in 1887, that we can see that 84 churches in the Syro-Malabar group or the Padegur, 84 churches denied missionaries and supporting Paramikal. They wanted independence rule. This was the situation. And that situation, the move started, and Father Alvarez approached we must notice that at that time, the name was God given to Malagra Orthodox Church. Original name was Malagra Jacobite or Syrian Christians, and Independent Catholic Mission. And we can see that the Episcopal Synod of the Malagra Church provided Father Alvarez the title Apostolic Prelate or Prefect of the Independent Catholic Mission of Ceylon and Goa and provided the Holy Chrism to him. They accepted him. The Independent Catholic Mission elected Father Alvarez for the Episcopal Order and proposed his name to Malagra Metropolitan and the Holy Episcopal Synod to consecrate him as a bishop of the community. The Holy Episcopal Synod accepted the request and decided to consecrate Father Alvarez as Metropolitan, Archbishop of the Western Orthodox Rite Community of the Malankara Church. Even though Archbishop joined, the Father Alvarez wanted to join the Malankara Orthodox Church, negotiations went on, and the church was ready to allow him to keep all his rights, traditions, what all he got, what all that community got, the independent movement, they allowed it. The Malankara Church allowed it, and by that the Synod sent a proposal along with the request for the ordination of Mar Alvarez in consideration of his service to the church. Father Alvarez was deemed worthy of receiving the episcopal consecration. The Syrian Metropolitan of Malabar, Mar Joseph Dionysius, with the assistance of Mar Gregorios, Bishop of Neranam and Kottayam, Mar Ivanius of Kandanad and Mar Athanasius consecrated Father Alvarez as Archbishop of Ceylon and India over the Latin branch of the Church of Antioch, otherwise called the Independent Catholic Church. So it was considered as a Latin branch of the Malankara Church or the Latin branch of the Orthodox Church, because he is keeping all this Latin. The chief ceremony consisted of the staticon and the gospel placed in name. And we have given after the consecration, the authority, the staticon or the permission was given to Alvarez. We certify that Reverend Antonio Francis Xavier Alvarez was elevated to the order of presbyter by the virtue of special authority confirmed in under number 50 of the second canon and by the apostolic decree of the most excellent Brother Superior His Holiness Moran Mar Ignatius Patro, third Patriarch of the Apostolic See of Antiochia, and the whole of the East to celebrate solemn Mass, orations, and is to hold office, which today is consecrated by the Holy Spirit Metropolitan Diocese of Ceylon, Goa, and India, with the exclusion for a while of Malabar through the patriarchal order, and joining our feeble hands on his head, he was titled as Mar Julius, confirming the order through a decree of His Holiness. So this was the situation, and this is the power given to Mar Alvarez. This movement was supported by the church, and it was all part of the other independent church movements. We cannot see anything else in that. From that perspective, we should see the independent church movements which take place in different parts of the world, and it took place in India and in Malabar and in the Burma coast. And Father Alvarez was accepted and consecrated as Metropolitan of the Malankara Orthodox Church. And after that, he served the church as a diocesan bishop, as a normal bishop in different dioceses. When some of the dioceses were vacant, he was appointed as their in charge of that diocese and all, and he continued as a bishop of the Malankara Orthodox Church, and that movement was great, and we are still supporting that movement, and our community is there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Father, for your presentation. In fact, as far as I know, Father Emil John has been traveling a lot in the last 3 weeks, and it is our pleasure to have him here today for 2 days with us. So now I announce the opening of the roundtable discussion. Since we don't have a roundtable, we are going to set the chairs in front of here, and please come over so that we can have a discussion face to face. Please.
Yeah, this is okay.
At the same time,
This is
set
okay.
the chairs.
This is okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
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 The paper and the title.
I'll tell you.
If they occupy the seats here, it's okay.
Yes, please, feel free to come.
So sitting in the back seat. The vacant chairs, there are some chairs being put there.
Because this is again feeling like a lecture, not like equal communication. But please feel free to come. Because the purpose of having a so-called roundtable discussion is that everyone is encouraged to say something briefly or intensively, lengthily on any reflection, any comments, or even the organization of the conference, anything. Oh, thank you for coming. And also, this is the end of 2 days of intensive workshop, and I'm sure everyone is tired. Even sitting there listening to 2 days of papers is a very heavy task. This is not a formal discussion, because what I want to encourage is to truly speak freely. And this is not a press interview or conference. And I don't think by 2 days intensive presentations on such vast topics, even though we have a focus, but our perspectives are so vast, and I don't think we have reached any solid conclusion. And I think this is a very good starting point for each of us, because each of the presenters in this workshop is invited on the basis of my personal interview and contacts and visits. And I know to work on Julius is not a volunteer choice for Father Arundas, because this is truly new and pioneering research. Especially Father's research is based on archival sources. So this makes his contribution extremely precious for historians. So I would say that as we compared with my colleague Adrian Herman's research, our approach has been very different. What he has been doing is working on purely periodicals and the interactions between the independent Catholic Philippine journals with other Philippine journals at the same time. But our focus has been chasing unpublished sources and different voices from different archives, different churches, and especially this very complicated interaction between rival churches. Even though Father Alvarez has published a lot of Portuguese and English newspapers, but unfortunately we cannot find the whole complete version of all the newspapers. Because of the language obstacles, as far as I know, Malakara scholars haven't been able to access these journals. But from my research project, especially the book I'm preparing for this project in University of Bonn, a large part of the research analysis will be based on these Portuguese and English newspapers. Those sources so far I have collected in Goa and Portugal. So this is my starting comments. I wish I can invite more comments and opinions from the audience.
Congratulations for organizing this 2-day seminar. conference, and it's very much enriching. There's a lot of learning in this conference. Maybe I'd like to go back to the theme or the title that is given, that is Independent Church Movement. After today's session, I would feel that this may not be an independent church movement, because at the end we don't find an independent church. There is a movement, and through this movement some people change the allegiance, or they may be finding some other church, some other hierarchy. So independence is there from one hierarchy, but there is allegiance to the another hierarchy. So when we come to Julius Alvarez, there also we find the change of independence or independent church, a different church in itself, dogmatically and structurally, hierarchically, we don't find it. Rather, it becomes part of another church which is already existing. So this is what I find. Even the community of this movement, whether in here in BuonaMonte Church or from Mawa or other parts, from the discussions I understood that the same traditions continued. Same tradition. That's why, going back to the very title, Independent Church Movement. So how can we understand it better?
I hope this is, yeah, please.
That is depending on our understanding of independence. What is independence? Whether it's independence from authority, that is there. Changing allegiance from one head of the church to the other head of the church. Is it independence from liturgy? No. Is it independence from traditions or practices? No. The same thing is keeping. But independence is there. That is why I said that is depending on the understanding of independence, the independent church movement. Definitely it is an independent church movement because we are taking allegiance and to different churches, and they have got some independence.
I think that, as you said, Father, there is an element of independent movement, especially in the case of Mar Alvarez, because there is a political dimension. In fact, so far as from my little reading, I understand that allegiance with Padroado is also some sort of retaining the independence or the nationality. Because Goa was not a dominion, Goa was a part of the Portuguese Empire, and a offshore partner with a member of parliament in Portugal. So when it was denied, it is a question of political independence. Secondly, he affiliated for the time being, or he tried to affiliate with the Patriarch of Antioch. But immediately he ceased all his relations with Antioch and totally concentrating with the Malankara Orthodox Church. In fact, we were under the spiritual authority of the Patriarch of Antioch then. Joseph Ganesh V, the then Premier of the Malankara Orthodox Church, was in fact in shadow fighting to retain the independent authority of the Malankara Orthodox time then. So there is ecclesiastical and political independence is there. And one more thing you should note, that in 1911, when a crisis arises and when the successor of Dionysius V, Dionysius VI, was excommunicated by the Patriarch of Antioch for the question of temporal authorities. Openly, Mar Alvarez published a document supporting Mar Dionysius. That means, of course, even in that time, Mar Alvarez or his community was not changed their customs or rite or liturgy or whatsoever. But still, he supported
with the understanding of the consequences. Why? Because there was an element of independence even there, even making a new allegiance. Like I agree with Father Dr. Emma John that independence from what? Political, it may be political, it may be theological, it may be sovereignty, so anything. So in this case, we can take only one, or I can take only two things. One is political independence, and secondly, ecclesial independence. That was there.
In my opinion,
the independence, in my understanding, is that first of all we should understand that colonialization starts with missionary movements. You know, when Portuguese came as traders and established trade units here, then came missionaries. Then established churches. And when an independent struggle of any country starts, it's the reverse process. So there is an independence that is required from foreign rule for native churches. So native church wants to rule themselves and self-govern themselves. That is the independence that I understand from this movement. And that which leads to also independent struggle of a particular country to do everything by themselves and refusing the colonialization.
In my opinion, this very conference is very fruitful for me, and the outcome of this one, Father Arudas is just beside me. He also focused so many things that which we are not aware about, and such movements had taken place all over India, Ceylon, and so many other. Dr. Adrian also mentioned so many things in Philippines, and so many other nations also had such movements. But here, during this paper presented, I, on my perspective, present the independent Catholic movement. At the same time, so many other scholars presented in that regard. But all of in totality, we got certain things that which we can collaboratively do and understand in all perspectives. That is the better outcome of this conference. That is my opinion.
Father Sixtus.
For me, first of all, the meaning of independence must be understood properly. A human being, once born, as children, we are dependent on the parents, and later on we develop ourselves for independence, and marriages that comes in, and we want to be independent and start our own. That is in the family independence, and still you'll find within the family so much of dependency and also authority coming in, giving various types of customs and traditions. So similarly, when we go in the society, we need to study from the time of the Pax Romana, and then coming to the Holy Roman Empire, the struggle between the Latin Church and the Greek Church, and why the Lutheran Church, when it developed, it was all nationalism, and within the church there were so many Holy Roman Empire, Pope holding political power, and there was independent movement that came in Italy. So along with that, the colonial aspect that came in here, we are even today, some of the church documents and all those things are mainly Western oriented. So when it comes to Western orientation and thinking, they will not allow the Eastern thinking to come into play. While they themselves took in the Western or Greek philosophy, we are unable to present ourselves with our Eastern philosophy. So this is also one factor of independent thinking, and why this whole movement within
political independence that came in. We have to understand at the 19th century, the First World War, then the Second World War background, and then the movement from the Lutheran Church onto the Anglican Church, and the hodgepodge in America with various types of churches that came in, and they began to show we can think independently. So these are the aspects when you want to speak of independence. You have to understand in a context of the man searching for freedom, then the groups and families, then the whole area of people, the way of thinking and expression in languages, customs, all these things come into play when we look for our independence, and we focus our independence here. We focus it only mostly in terms of church administration and institutional struggles, but much more is involved in claiming independent churches. Thank you.
Yep. We have to say only one more thing about independence, that's because we have to discuss about the BuonaMonte church also. That should also come into discussion. It's a round table discussion.
Okay, I'll finish the whole thing. And on my side, I congratulate the organizers for organizing this. To me, it looks to be, maybe I'm a student, it's looked to a starting point to look deep into some of the problems that independent movements in the church starts. I find between the colonial point of view and European point of view, it is different. Whereas Utrecht's resolutions and the First Vatican reflections in the European church is different from what you see in the Asian perspective. So they cannot at last be compared. But of course in the European movement they were looking for what is called episcopal continuity. But here it is slightly different. It is definitely political in the sense the administrative question of looking in. One was on the infallibility of the Pope. Here it was not so. It was questioning foreign authority. So it is perhaps some of them are beginning of an independent movement against colonialization, and it gets reflected in the church because the educated people in these countries were Christians, and you would see first they will react in their community. So definitely it is against the colonial movement in the sense that I don't mean a particular European country, whatever that is there. See, in our case, it was not an European country who were colonizing here, but through a certain dogmatic influence that being brought in, we were enslaved to think that we are being colonized in our faith. So I think both are different, and they need to be different and cannot be compared. So independence you would see in the European movement, they are all independent. Only thing is that they have what they have common is communion together. But they are all independent. But here they were not looking for that. Here they were looking for, in the administrative one, they have a voice. So from more an autocratic thing to a democratic movement has come, and they must have found Orthodox Church is moving in that direction also. So maybe that could be one influence. You would see is that Orthodox Church is the one which has a very democratic setup parallelly being made, and our infallibility is that of the synod. So it's collective. People have a voice there. So definitely it had reflection in Orthodox Church also. And then when our constitution was made, it gets reflected that way also. So this is my opinion, and my opinion is that it needs to be looked in, but it was a very open forum where you would see people we could express our ideas without not even a dialogue, but still the ideas were open, and you should continue doing such things. And we expect the university to go on, or people like you to call on people from various fields and discuss these matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I really feel blessed for having come over here to attend this meeting. It's really interesting. I don't want to enter into the question of independence, because I have a strong conviction that we can never be independent 100%. That is true. As the father from that side, he said, no, even the families, we are not really independent. Somewhere we are dependent. Okay. But I see among us Jesuits, in Tamil Nadu, Madurai province. Foreigners were there, Europeans, French missionaries, they were there. They were heading the church. And there was a time they were not able to supply missionaries. So they thought of Sudesya Gurukul, that is priests from the land, Sudesya Gurukul. They started talking about it. Then, when they started talking about it, Sudesya Gurukul in Tamil Nadu, among us, it was the Mangaloreans who dominated. So the Tamils were feeling it's the domination of the Mangaloreans and Malayalis and all those things. Then the Tamils came. Now it is 100% Tamils. And when the Tamils have come, now the cost factor plays. So it is there somewhere or other. What I want to say is we will never be independent anyway. Let us accept the differences. At the same time, let us enjoy that and then come together. We, instead of going for a divergence, let us find the points of convergence and then celebrate that. That will be a nice thing.
Thank you. Any other comments on independence or other terms? In fact, our BuonaMonte Church is the cathedral of the independent Catholic Church. So we are stick to the topic. So I want to add to Father Arunda's point. Basically, it is a complexity of identity and spiritual identity or nationalist identity. I just want to go back again to the independent church movement. I would, at this stage of research, I would argue that this term was first used not by Father Alvarez or Dr. Lisboa Pinto, but by the community set up by Dr. Miso. And we have, most of us have met the descendant of Dr. Miso this morning. And it's clearly himself, Dr. Miso, and the majority of the independent Catholics surrounding the church were burghers. And in the beginning of Miso's church movement, the goal of his movement was to keep the Portuguese patronage, because these burghers identified themselves as Portuguese citizens. And if we go to Father Alvarez himself, I just want to remind you that the last English newspaper edited by Father Alvarez is called The Times of Goa. So far, we only find one copy, one issue of this newspaper. And in the title of the newspaper, it is the coat of arms of Kingdom of Portugal. That newspaper was edited around 1885. So that shows a clear identity of being a Portuguese citizen. And from reading Father Alvarez's own words written in Portuguese, he was very proud of being a Portuguese and from a great metropolitan of Portugal, which is called Goa. So I want to bring these details, try to make this us and others, national or foreigners or colonialism, more complex than we might think about. And the research on 19th century Christianity in Goa, for instance, is extremely poor so far. Because the historical research, the scholarship is very much focused on the early modern time. Because as we know, the 19th century history of South Asia is extremely developed and complicated. Theories on this topic is also very diverse. And we have now colonialism, post-colonialism, and you can have very different interpretations of history. So the purpose of bringing two projects together, the project on the Philippines Independent Catholic Movement and one in Ceylon, is not to make a simple comparison, but to make a contrast of the local features and the very contextualized history of Christianity in 19th century, a global history of 19th century history. So here, I don't know if any one of you would like to comment further. Or I think we are truly at the very end of the workshop. It's half an hour extended already.
So we'll conclude now. So we will continue the discussions of independence and the movement of Father Alvarez, Bishop Alvarez, and all the other movements in different parts of the world. There is always a moment, and it is alive, and we are also participating in that by these discussions, by following up the discussions and making presenting purpose, and all these things is part of our study on our movement or our participation in the independence movement which is going on. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
See, I have one question. How about the availability of the presentation materials? Can we get it?
The
distribution of the paper.
Oh, okay. Yes, we have wonderful presentations, but not everyone has sent the full paper to me, and I wouldn't circulate the manuscripts to the public. Because if you are interested in a certain presentation, please feel free to contact the author individually. And next day I would collect your emails. If you want to give me your emails, please come to me, and I will write a public collected email to all of you after the workshop, and then you can identify who is who.
We have given in the register. We have given all our email ID in the register.
Okay.
So
Then I will work on this.
Yes.
I will provide a mailing list and send to each of the participants in this workshop.
Some other programs. We will continue the program.
For the conclusion.
Dr. Ray?
Come and stay in the stage.
For the last...
for the announcement,
For the announcement.
He is seated there.
We also should be.
There should be a feeling that the meeting is concluding. Go and sit there.
Yeah.
Let me go first. You can come, Acha. You just
As a concluding session, as one of the partners of this conference, we would like to honor each one of you for your contributions and helping this conference move ahead in so far and making it very successful to this extent. And I would ask each of the dignitaries who's sitting on the stage to make their remarks, and then we will have something to be given away.
Our fathers, brothers and sisters, extremely happy to see that this conference ended with a big success. When I came here last time here, the discussion was on the day of independence. The title of our conference is A Local and Global History of BuonaMonte Church. I don't know what is your conclusion about that one, but you were very hotly discussing on the term independence. I am not a historian, I am a theologian. For theological people, the term independence is not that much is not a good term. Because theologically speaking, we are to depend with each other in order to live in this world. So dependency is the most beautiful word for us as theologians. But I understood why you are making this fight on the term independence. It's very clear. Because we are, historically speaking, we are freedom fighters. Especially those who were suffering under the colonial invasions. They always want freedom. And in that time, perhaps what you are discussing on the time independence may be apt or suitable there. But theologically speaking, we are having big fear on the day of independence, especially when we fight on that time independence. Anyhow, let me leave that point. Here, the local and global history of Monte Church, that is a very important theme for us. Today we went there and we celebrated the Holy Liturgy there in the church. And we found that still the faithful and the reverend sisters, they were fighting for some kind of independence there. This is what I felt there when I went there. So, in a way, we are freedom fighters for freedom till the end of our life. That's what is happening. And we should pray for the freedom of the sisters and the faithful of the the present faithful of the Monte Church, in order to make them to live freely without having any other problem from outsiders or the Christian church. I think this conference, you people presented 8+4, I think. So around 12 purposes were present here. And I did not hear all the purposes, but I understood that each and every paper was presented in a very well manner. And we hope to publish all those purposes together after making necessary editing and corrections, getting the comments of the so-called audience here who are hearing and commenting on their purpose. So that would be helpful for the future research too, because this is only a beginning. And as I said in the first session, inaugural session, this is the first of its kind. So we need to have a second of its kind. There we should use those purposes who are presented here for a proper, fruitful research in order to get a good outcome. Let me conclude here. I congratulate all the presenters who have come over here after preparing well and presenting their purpose in a way which is comprehensible by everybody who are here. May God bless them. Let me congratulate the organizers, those who have organized, especially Dr. Vail and her team, Father Joey and his team, and Father Linu and Sujit and their team. They were working hard in order to make this program in a very marvelous way, and I feel that they have done, the result, the outcome is excellent. So I congratulate all the team of organizers and their helpers for making this program in a wonderful way. Of course, we need to give our thanks and gratitude to the custodians of this particular house, Caritas. Reverend fathers, reverend sisters, and the other people who were providing us with this hall, with this facility here. That is why we are here freely using all their facilities in order to organize this camp here. So on behalf of all of us, we give our thanks to the custodians of this, custodians and inmates of this particular campus of Caritas. Those who have come over here to listen the papers and give the comments, that is very important. If you are not here, then it is very clear that you have been fruitful. All those who are present here, I am very proud of our lay people. Lay people means the non-clergy people who are coming from far and near. They were actively participating in this seminar through their comments and remarks. That is very important. So I congratulate them and thank every one of you, especially the lay people from all denominations who have come over here. Not only from one church, all the other churches, all the three organizing groups. They were coming out, they were doing their best to make this program a success. Many people were helping us. Some of them were in the front row, and some others were in the back bench, and some others were even behind the curtain. We were having good food, delicious food in different places, not only in Caritas. I took very few food only here in Caritas. My food is from Mr. Saju and Moni. They were preparing food for me and Monte and Corpus. We are having our food there. This Caritas, they were preparing food for all the delegates here. And on another family, Biju and Nisha, they were preparing food the first day. So all those people are to be remembered with gratitude and thanks. So on behalf of this conference, let me extend my thanks and gratitude to all who have helped us in the forefront, in the back bench, and behind the curtain.
Sponsors.
The sponsors of this program. A lot of people, of course, we can say that they are standing behind the curtain. A lot of people helped us to realize this program in a wonderful way. Those who are from far and from near. From the Catholic Church, those who are in connection with the University of Buona, and from the Orthodox Church. All the sponsors are to be remembered. And let us thank all of them for their generous help to organize this seminar in a very well manner. The church heads here, the Cardinal, we have visited him today and we were having a very grand welcome and hospitality there in his house, Archbishop's house. And we were conveying the greetings from His Holiness the Catholicos from India to him. So all the heads are to be remembered because of their very active support to this program. I think I have said all. all the Reverend Fathers, all the beloved lay people are to be remembered with thanks and gratitude, and I thank you all for making this program a wonderful one. Well be done is half done. This is our normal proverb. So the program, the beginning of the program went well. So half is done. We need to move forward. You have to work together. Anyhow, you have got a good team now. With this team, with this team, you need to forward in order to get the good outcome to our attempt. Jonathan was pointing to the video camera web team. Noel Achen and Ajit Achen. Both of them were working very hard. Of course, their TV is called Alvarez TV. That is very important. They are doing it in the name of a Holy Father. All the other fathers of Brahma community, Ashwin Achin, we don't consider him Brahma community. Ashwin Achin belongs to the center of the church. So we don't think that he is coming from Brahma. Of course, he was belonging to the Brahma community. Now he is no more a Brahma person. He is a Malayali person living in Kottayam. But still, Ashwin Achin is to be given thanks and thanks for his support. He is the one who brought all these mementos and the other gifts from India to.
No, only some of the gifts. The mementos are from Achin.
Mementos Ninu Achin, of course. Okay, anyhow, he had got a big box in his hand. I don't know what was that.
That is something to bring up.
Good. So the web group, the video group, camera group, we thank all of them. I think it's okay. Let us complete the program by giving this memento to and this to I take others as a good.
It's great. You have thanked everybody, but we have to thank you for taking your time and coming here and being with us and leading us through the program. So I request Majon Achin to present Sean to Tirumeni.
Tirumeni was telling thanks to everybody, but the man behind this thing is no one else but our Metropolitan Dr. Yohanan Mar Dioscoros. I congratulate him and extending all of our thanks and honoring him by this shot.
Thank you so much.
Now we will read out the names. First, request Tirumeni to present Dr. B.
Look like you, yeah. Good. God bless you.
May we invite Father Julius Balagala.
Good.
Co-Episcopal Philip Thomas. Dr. M. Kurian Thomas. Father Abraham Kuriakos. Father Noel Lewis. Father Ashwin Fernandez. Dr. Abraham Burgess. Father Thomas Philippos. Mr. Bipin Burgess. Ms. Niranjani Ronald.
Niranjani is a photographer.
Mr. S.P. Jayaratnam. Mr. Jaco Varanam. Mr. S. Madhavi. Mr. S. Diclinos. I hope I spelled it right. Diclinos. Mr. S.M. Prakash. Ms. Sharon Sujit. I think we'll also invite Mr. Sujit. Sujit also. Yeah. Mr. Hemal Perunu. Mr. Samuel Saju.
Hey, both come.
Mr. and Mrs. Saju Samuel.
Alla, idonna. Okay.
Can face here. 1 minute. Just face here.
Mr. Ramesh Norris.
Good.
Reverend Professor G. Pilendra. Okay, Reverend Ramesh. Rajesh. No. Reverend Father Lawrence David Cresta. Reverend Dr. S. Aruldas. Reverend Father Rajesh Rosario. Rajesh Rosario.
You are golden.
Reverend Brother Niroshan Pereira. Reverend Father Ignatius. Okay. Stalinus Devota. Mr. Stalinus.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'll take the photo. You go.
I'll take the photo.
She will take. The photographer is there.
Taking the photo.
Mr. K. Matthew.
Mr. K. Matthew is one of the team committee from Chennai.
Mr. P.T. Thomas.
Coming from Saudi Arabia.
Sheikh.
You can call him Sheikh.
And we have Mr. Biju George, who's been silently working behind the scene.
He is a Sri Lankan Indian.
May we also request Reverend Father M.O. John Achin also to receive this memento from Triveni. Finally, we have Reverend Father Lino Achin to receive the memento.
And Thomas Simon from
Everybody go?
Thomas Simon.
Father Sixtus.
Father Sisters?
Yes.
It's anywhere.
Father Sixtus. Sorry, we are just reading out from the...
Come here, please.
The registers.
Yeah, we are just reading from the register.
They missed in the register.
Not that you are reading.
വളരെ നന്ദി. Anybody else? The name is Thomas Simon from Dubai. One together with Sujit. They were the people who came here first in order to discuss things here.
Representing Kalidas.
Special gift to Achan. Special gift to you. Good. Come here, come here. Thank you so much for everything.
അല്ലെ കുറച്ചുപേര് മേടിക്കാൻ
So once again, thank you all for your very active and loving participation. Let us conclude with the benediction. May the love of God the Father, grace of only begotten Son, communion and union with the Holy Spirit be with us all, especially with the organizers, presenters, and those who are participants, the three organizations and churches, forever and ever. Amen. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
ഇതാ ഓക്കെ
Shall I give it after we return from the dinner?
Yeah.
അച്ഛാ ഒരു ഫോട്ടോ എടുക്കണേ, ഗിഫ്റ്റ് കൊടുക്കുന്നത്. അശ്വരച്ചാ ഈ കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങളെ കഴിഞ്ഞോ?
No, I was about to tell about it, yes, but then I thought if it is there or
അറിയാം. ഓക്കെ, ഒന്ന് കൊടുത്താൽ വഴക്കുണ്ടാക്കി, രണ്ടെണ്ണം കൊടുക്കണം.